Out of the gates and ready to go. Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow underway on this Wednesday edition. Certainly glad you're with us as we broadcast from 6th and Peabody in Music City with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Jam-packed show. They always are. Eager to get to it. Chad, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Hutton.
Jim Nagy will join us.
Yes, he will.
Executive Director of the Reese's Senior Bowl, and we'll certainly have thoughts on Ohio State, Penn State, and much more. That's coming up in 20 minutes. Primary complaints each and every Wednesday. Later this hour, we'll air our top grievance of the week. Clay Travis will join us in hour number 2. Always love having the founder of OutKick join us. We'll talk college football, Jim Harbaugh, Michigan, sign stealing, and a lot more. And we'll do the same with Andy Staples of On3, the insider for college football at On3. Staples joins us at the 2 hours from right now, actually. Chad, plenty to chat about with Michigan today.
Well, and when we get Andy Staples on, it was his tweet post on X. I'm still having a hard time figuring out exactly what to say with that prompted us to look into this more. But a poster at volquest.com
yes,
with our buddies Brent Hubbs and Austin Price had this Connor Stallions scandal nailed back in December of 2022, saying that he had a family friend who was paid by Michigan and Connor Stallions to scout the Tennessee-Vanderbilt game, but backed off of that after Tennessee lost to South Carolina the week before, as Michigan was scouting possible college football playoff opponents. Andy Staples posted about this. There's a bigger spider web here that we can start to untangle a little bit that we'll bring up with Andy later in the show. Conspiracy theories in college football. One of the great things about the sport, one of the reasons I love it, is when fans' ideas, as crazy as they may sound, can become reality in the legends of different programs and the folklore of different programs. This is one of those that's going to take off. It's going to lead to people dissing the other side with this claim for years to come about what may have happened before the Tennessee-South Carolina game a year ago, what may have happened with other programs as well. We'll get into it with Andy Staples. I don't buy it, but it's fun to speculate. And these type of things that happen in college football, it's one of a kind, Hutton. It is one of one. I feel like it's a sport that's made for conspiracy theories like this one. And the deeper we dive into Connor Stallions and all of his activities and all of his Venmos and all of his ticket purchases and everything else, the further this thing expands across the world of college football.
Chad, let's chat a bit here. Let's dig a layer or two deeper on a couple of questions. Let's start with this. The vast majority of what we're seeing is about last season. And why do you think it came out now? Why did the complaints all of a sudden boil and bubble up to the surface right now? Do you think it had something to do with the way Harbaugh handled the recruiting violations and investigation earlier this year, publicly, where he was defiant? Because if you have all of this and if the coaches are leaking this and they're pissed off, why wait until Michigan is on this run right now instead of the run they were on last year where they went to the college football playoff? Why complain now instead of last year when everyone knew it was going on, or at least suspected it was going on? We went back. You've got Schiano at halftime of this year discussing it, but there's clear evidence in video, and it's pretty obvious that Stallions is not trying to hide the fact that he's staring right across the field 52 yards away and looking at the signs that are being sent into the opposing quarterback and then relaying that to the defensive coordinator. I mean, it's the timing of it is just intriguing for me. I don't know if it is for you.
Well, and you would think that if this message board poster had a family friend, hey, my brother's friend or someone I know is being paid by Michigan to do this, if he had that knowledge and someone was speaking to that level to him, how many other people should have known about it a year ago when a lot of this was happening? That's an interesting question. I'm not sure the answer on it. My first inclination was Greg Schiano's halftime media interview was very weird, like he knew something was up. I thought something was happening this year with some of those beatdowns that coaches started talking and then maybe coaching staff members, coaches like to gossip. It's like a coffee klatch when they get together. They text, they talk all the time about what's going on. I think different staff started talking to each other and had the same suspicions and heard the same rumors and knew of things. And I think that only the NCAA would move forward when there was some sort of video evidence. I think one or two of these schools provided that with whoever was at a game and whatever was going on, and that's when it took off. I don't know that the timing has anything to do with anything other than that's when they got the hard evidence they needed to go after Michigan. But I don't know that it's the 3-game suspension and how he handled it.
But it was Michigan that handled that end. It wasn't the NCAA, because he would not agree to the negotiation with the NCAA. And so Michigan's athletic department handed down the 3-game suspension. And normally a program does that to lighten whatever is about to happen. Again, that's one question and I've pondered over the last 24 hours. And then there's this. There is no precedent for what we're seeing here in terms of penalty and what will be the outcome of this. But more than likely, this outcome ends after Harbaugh is no longer the head coach at Michigan because he takes an NFL gig.
If you're waiting on the NCAA.
If you're waiting on the NCAA investigation. And what happens if you are a part of the Michigan program next year or the year after or whatever penalty they want to hand down? If Harbaugh's getting away with lying about what he knew or what he did not know in that statement that he sent out, allegedly. And what do you do if you're the Big Ten? If you're Tony Petitti? If you are someone that wants to flex? Because the NCAA, in theory, its perception is they don't have much power. They took a step back from that in 2021. How will that be levied moving forward if you know where we're headed, which is the power conference, and the NCAA is trying to be a part of that, but are they a part of that? We know who's in control here. It's Greg Sankey and the Big Ten commissioner, who is Tony Petitti. If you want to penalize Harbaugh and the current team, would he do that? Would he step in and do that? Or if you're the Big Ten, but I say that because he would have the support of every president, chancellor, AD, coach across the board, except for Michigan in this. So he would be serving those that he is working for and speaking for on behalf of the Big Ten Conference. But you would also be hurting the Big Ten Conference for a team that can absolutely win the national championship, not just get to the playoff, but win the title this year. And you would be siding with the NCAA, almost validating what they're doing in this investigation. And is that the perception that you want to portray? I don't know if Greg Sankey would do this if roles were reversed.
He absolutely would not.
But he already has the power and authority and the speaking voice of the face of college football, for that matter, when it comes to what they're doing moving forward with the college football playoff. Everyone wants Sankey's opinion on this, what they're doing and why they want federal legislation across NIL and why we are headed towards the power super conference and why he believes it's down the road and not immediate. Again, he's got the power. He doesn't have to flex. Does the new commissioner have to do that? Or does he sit back and just allow this to happen, then allow one of his member schools to be penalized for something that happened under Harbaugh's watch? I would love to know what he would like to do versus what he's going to do.
Well, the only way that he could act right now, if you're Tony Petitti, you go to every other member institution. And if they're all coming to you and saying, this is so far beyond the pale of anything that we would ever do. This is not common. No, none of us are sending things out. Are people looking at the other sideline during games and trying to see if they can gauge what's going on? Sure. If they admitted to something, but not this. This is way too far than what he's done. I would want an assurance from Tony Petitti, from every single program and athletic director. Your house better be in order on this. Because if I act right now and I suspend Jim Harbaugh for the remainder of the season, which maybe should be done, and that costs Michigan something, a playoff spot, whatever it may be, I can't have in 6 months everyone coming back tattletelling on the other one, or the NCAA announcing an investigation into Illinois, Michigan State, Nebraska, Indiana, and everyone else because everyone's doing it. I said yesterday, the one fallback for Michigan, whether right or wrong, and I don't think this is the case, but they would have to come back and prove that this is common. Hutton has cited a story with anonymous coaches saying it is pretty common in terms of trying to steal signs.
And some on the record, too.
Well, the director of the College Football Coaches Association, the AFCA, came out and said, I had someone do it, and they video, but I didn't look at it.
He sent a fan to games and then would have the fan video on his phone and send those back as a text.
About as believable as Bill Clinton saying he didn't inhale is what I'm hearing with that. It's stupid. It makes no sense. Why would you have someone do it for a competitive advantage if you're not going to do it?
It's as believable as Harbaugh not knowing that this is going on.
It's also clearly a competitive advantage. You don't do it if it's not. This was the argument from Patriots fans. It's what's going on with Spygate. It's not a big deal. You're not really getting much from that. Everything's on film. No, you're doing it because it gives you an advantage. You're not going to that effort and going out of your way to circumvent a rule unless it gives you a competitive advantage. So let's cut that out right now. The only way Michigan does not look awful here, and the only way Jim Harbaugh continues to have a job coaching college football, is if there is proof and or admission from various other programs that they're up to the same stuff. And I'm not talking about, under the cloak of darkness, friends of the program, not wearing the gear, happening to tell some coach about what they've seen or what's going on. I'm talking about an orchestrated program led by a director of intelligence hired from the U.S. Naval Academy as a Marine to run ops for your football program. That's what went on here. With the amount of tickets he purchased, with the amount of games he attended, with the people he was sending out, him standing next to the offensive coordinator in one moment, then the defensive coordinator next. This was an organized operation. And
obvious.
So
how do you not notice this last year?
You've got to prove, and maybe they needed it happening multiple times in order to prove it, or someone got the video evidence they needed, along with the ticket stubs, along with the purchase, which was foolishly made in Connor Stallion's name.
But those,
a lot of these instances,
those didn't come out until after the NCAA alerted the Big Ten and Michigan of the investigation, and then Michigan suspended Connor Stalions, and then the media started looking for Connor Stalions on the Michigan sideline.
I don't know that the media. Here's where my faith is in media today, right? I don't think the media looked for anything. I think they got this from the investigation. I think whoever's reported Michigan is turning over evidence they already had.
No,
or someone from the NCAA.
That's what I'm saying. That you've got the local reporters that are on the sideline with the local news cameras that you can see in the background. There's Connor Stalions next to the defensive coordinator. That's all I'm saying.
No, I'm saying the ticket purchases, things like that, where the 30 games he attended and all that. I think that's coming from the report or what the NCAA knows. That's either being tipped off by the school that reported it or the NCAA is tipping that off to a reporter is probably what's going on. It looks like they have them. Now, the only issue is, I can't even believe I'm saying this, Arnie Palmer, the Tennessee message board poster, who apparently has this nailed, in a January post claims the one rule is no one talks to Jim Harbaugh about it. That they never make direct contact with Jim Harbaugh. Plausible deniability. 2 words that are important with a lot of different issues. Plausible deniability. Jim Harbaugh may have that. Now, it's up to the NCAA or Tony Petitti, as you brought up, Hutton, and the Big Ten to decide. Do you buy that? Because you can say, no, I don't care that we don't have text from someone. You hired this guy. It's your program. There have been plenty of instances where even if there's not direct written communication or solid proof, that it doesn't matter because you're the head of the program and the old you should have known clause. Even if you're claiming ignorance, you should have known that your coordinators and assistant coaches were communicating with a guy on your staff paid by you and your program that was out illegally scouting on site. I don't see this ending well for Jim Harbaugh. Hutton, a great question you raised, though. When does it not end well for him? Does it matter because he's already taken an NFL job after Michigan wins a national championship this season and they later try to take down some banner from them? Or does it happen? Or does it happen this year?
Not at the NCAA's pace.
The only way you really punish them is do something this season.
And you take out,
because this is a possible national championship season.
And then,
that could be derailed.
And then the NCAA takes out the Big Ten's, possibly the Big Ten's payout for the college football playoff, which is, again, I think there's two things at play here. Number one, I think a lot of coaches aren't stepping up because and saying anything, say we didn't do it to this extent because it's going on more than we know. And I think that's the only difference is if Power 5 School A shows up, they're not wearing the gear. Connor Stallions is wearing the Michigan maize and blue while he's doing all this on location. I think that's the main difference. And you've even got you've got the head of the Coaches Association saying that he did it with a fan. And also the rule book is so vague. More or less what it says, you can't do this, you can't scout off-site. So you can stand up there and look for signals from the press box.
Yeah.
And then relay it down, or go to the coach's booth and relay it down, and then tell the coach in the headset in real time what the play is. Or, I mean, again, you can't steal signs.
There's nothing vague about it.
Oh, it's very vague.
It's a very clear-cut rule.
What's the penalty?
You can't scout off-site.
And what's the penalty for it?
Well, you said the rule's vague. The rule's not vague. It says right there, you can't scout off-site. They could do all that on-site.
With cameras.
Yeah, I don't know what they say about in-house with cameras and video equipment, but you can't scout off-site.
Jim Nagy scouts. He joins us next.
So there is a 26-year-old woman in Australia. Her name is Annie Knight. She is on OnlyFans. So that being said, this shouldn't be so surprising, but please wait for it. Annie is bragging about having slept with 300 people in 1 year.
What?
300. That is basically one person a day, but she didn't even space them out to that degree. She admitted to sleeping with 5 people in one day. And FYI, I say people because Annie does not discriminate. She sleeps with both men and with women. And the best part is she refers to this promiscuous lifestyle as empowering. Yeah, I'd be empowered to go get checked for STDs, but not much else empowering about this behavior. But this is the mentality that is being developed among women. They are out to prove they can do anything a man can. If you could put me on camera for this, that would be great, because I feel very strongly about this. Women are always out to prove that they can do what a man can, though it's very hypocritical, because if you ask me, because I would bet that if a man did do this and had this type of behavior that he was engaging in, women would be the first people to immediately call him toxic. Now, I would also love to know the family dynamic of Annie, because strong chances are she didn't have a strong male role model growing up, as she would have learned the degeneracy is the ultimate form of self-respect. And again, she's 26. I have no clue if and when she intends to get married, but this is going to be a hard sell for a future husband, or even wife for that matter, since she considers herself bisexual, who has even an ounce of regard for themselves. And let's be honest, Annie, if you slept with 300 people in 1 year, how many in your lifetime?
Ouch. Don't do that math. All I can think about is Wilt Chamberlain, because Wilt said he had 10,000 women. I'm like,
how do you
do the math? If you do that, don't do the math. You don't want to do the math because it's disgusting. And you go, okay, I know you're trying to brag with your boys a little bit, but 10,000.
Do you think that was real, 10,000?
That was that's the legend,
yeah,
right, of Wilt. And it's like, that's almost statistically impossible.
I mean, that's just, okay, first of all,
you don't have time for a nap.
I was going to say, first of all, it's just beyond the idea of, that's just gross.
Yes,
and,
yes, besides all of that.
That's one thing. But just, how do you, do you have to schedule appointments, or, do you literally just have to, go onto the street and be like, hey, you, come with me?
I've got a 6 o'clock, we got to get this in.
Because otherwise, I just don't even see how, because apparently, Annie says she goes on dating apps and finds a lot of her people.
Oh, boy.
So, I guess you just have to, learn how to build up a schedule in a way like that.
Well, my question for Annie is, why do you announce this? Why is this just for the OnlyFans? Is this does she think this is going to make her more profitable in that space by bragging about this? Because if it's true, you nailed it in your postscript, if you will. Like you need to go talk to some people outside of the people that you're spending your time with.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are obviously looking for fame and in their 15 minutes. And I think for her, this is her way of getting her 15 minutes. But it's just really disgusting. And I think she doesn't realize the huge disservice she's doing to herself for later on in life when she does realize.
Well, because those are real conversations you have with people that you actually end up spending time with.
Yeah.
Like, you don't necessarily want to go into the sordid past, but if you're bragging on OnlyFans,
all they have to do is a quick Google search, and then they find out, okay, actually you lied to me. It wasn't your 15 people like you said. It was actually 5,000.
315
in 1 year. Okay.
Sixth and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. We'll get back to the Michigan and sign-stealing discussion coming up. Jim Nagy will join us in a matter of minutes as well, the executive director of the Reese's Senior Bowl. They had today a big scouting meeting, all the scouts for the Senior Bowl in Mobile that wrapped up about an hour or so ago, and we'll go through the process and the detail of what was going on all weekend for him as they decide who they want to invite out to the Senior Bowl in February, and all the solid players that he was able to see this weekend and over the course of this upcoming weekend.
Senior Bowl getting a shout out on Football Night in America also, but Tyson Bagent.
Yeah.
That he was asked, when did you know? I think it was either that or Peter King's column I was reading where he was asked, when did you know that maybe you had a chance in the NFL or could play at this level? And he didn't really want to answer. He's like, I don't know that I've ever thought about it in those ways. And then was pressed for an answer and said, it was probably at the Senior Bowl. It was the first time that I really got the reassurance that maybe I could make this happen. So nice shout out for Jim Nagy on that one.
Yep, it'll join us momentarily. Chad, the parody in Major League Baseball was clearly evident throughout the season and postseason, where we have the World Series matchup, where it's now Arizona taking on Texas. What did parity end up determining this year for MLB? Yeah,
look, it's what it produced was a Rangers team that not many coming into the season thought had a chance, right, to make this work and to get to the World Series. What it also produced was a Diamondbacks team that for the first time since 1987 became a team to get to the World Series with a negative run differential over the course of the year. They were minus 15 over the course of the season. The New York Mets, who were terrible this year, had a better run differential than the Arizona Diamondbacks at minus 12 for the season. And here they are. Last team, by the way, to do it, 1987 Minnesota Twins, won the World Series in 7 games that season. So, it certainly can happen that way. And I'm looking right now at payrolls across Major League Baseball. Hutton, the Arizona Diamondbacks are 23rd in baseball. There's 30 teams in Major League Baseball. The Texas Rangers
top 10, but
are
lower in
8th in payroll.
And the Phillies were top 5?
Yeah, Phillies, and I'm looking right now at projections for 2024. Number 1 for 2024.
Okay.
Number 2, the New York Mets, 2 teams in the same division. Point being, for years and years, the knock on baseball was, the small markets have no chance. If you don't have an owner with deep pockets, a billionaire that's willing to risk all of their fortunes to buy players and get the top free agents, you shouldn't even be competing or thinking about a World Series championship. That's changed a lot over the years. We've seen organizations that are smarter, that draft better, that are more well-run, that have consistency, that have chemistry. They advance deep in the postseason. They make things happen when money doesn't make it happen, or when money's not as readily available as some other franchises across Major League Baseball. So Major League Baseball has craved that parity.
Yes.
They've desired that ability to remove themselves from the narrative that it's simply a pay-for-play type deal. And if you got the money, good, you're going to win a lot. And if you don't, you suck. You're not going to win much. Forget about it. That's been the knock on baseball. Well, now here we have it. Rangers, Diamondbacks, World Series. Exactly what everyone who would want to say that Major League Baseball has good parity would want in a World Series matchup. The problem is the television ratings will show that not many people want this. So Major League Baseball gets the parity they want, and they get a Diamondbacks-Rangers World Series that I think will fail miserably with television ratings.
Yeah, and the ratings have been down since 2020. 2019, 13.9 million average. Last year, 11.7. That was the lowest since 2020, which was 9.7.
You know what helped the ratings? Yankees, Dodgers.
Sure, yeah.
That's the sad reality of it. As much as people want to bitch and moan about the
big
rich
markets
getting all the players and making it happen, the best possible thing to happen for Major League Baseball in the World Series for interest is Yankees, Dodgers.
Jim Nagy joins us, the executive director of the Reese's Senior Bowl. He's been locked in scouting meetings for the last 2.5 days and comes out of the scouting cave to join us. Jim, how are you, man?
I am good. I'm tired of hearing myself talk, though. So, so hopefully you guys you'll carry me this segment.
Oh, no doubt. No
we
doubt.
get to hear you talk now, so that's different than you hearing yourself. So
You've
that's
carried
perfect.
us for weeks here, so yeah, absolutely. Let's start there. How many players are you guys going through in these scouting meetings?
A couple hundred at least, probably 250 around that. I don't know. It's a good question. We should go over the board and see how many we went over. A lot, because we cover everyone that has a draftable level grade, and there's variance on those grades. We'll have multiple scouts look at every player. So that's really what we're going over. I mean, when we see guys the same, there's not a lot to talk about. It's more about the guys we have grade variance on. So that's what these meetings were about. And then if we needed to get another look, we sent some guys off the call to do a little more tape. But now the next process, before I pop down here to do this, I'm reaching out to some NFL teams. I got to get some calls set up. We usually jump on calls with about half the league, 16, 17, 18 teams a year. And then now that we've got the board set kind of how we like it, how we see it, now it's time to compare notes with the NFL teams. And again, the end goal is to bring players they want to see here to Mobile. So that's kind of the last stage before we invite. Can
you give us a player or two that you're sending scouts out for another look or a deeper evaluation on?
Oh, geez. I don't know. I mean, we are going to go through the quarterbacks a little bit.
Okay.
We had pretty good consensus on like the top 4 or 5, and then the other thing we talked through is, are we going to bring 6 or are we going to bring 8? Usually we struggle to get to 6 that we feel really good about. In this year's class, there's probably more than 8. So yeah, we're going to do a little more work on those guys.
How cool is it for you when Tyson Bagent becomes a story for winning a game as a starting quarterback in the NFL, and knowing that you guys knew who he was, but I doubt many knew who he was, and now here he is on a roster with the Chicago Bears, and because of injury getting a chance to start, and in interviews mentioning the Senior Bowl experience as a big part of why he's starting for the Chicago Bears right now.
Yeah, I mean, the cool part is getting to know Tyson and his family, and then just knowing what an awesome moment that was for him. I think he brought like 50 family members or something to Chicago last week.
Some 60 plus. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So, I mean, and again, he's great young guy, and his family's awesome. And had a chance to reconnect with his head coach, Coach Ernie McCook, this week. Peter Schrager actually reached out to have him on his podcast. He's like, do you know the head coach? Can I get his stuff? So it's cool to talk to Coach again. I went up there. It was really about a year ago this time where I flew up to Shepherdstown and did the invite. So yeah, I mean, I was driving home from Auburn over the weekend, had that on Sirius Radio, listening to the game. And again, it just, I knew I'm not going to sit here and say I knew Tyson would, put up 30 points and win the game and all that, but I knew it wouldn't be too big for him. He's a really confident kid, and credit his dad. His dad's gotten a lot of the spotlight for being the world arm wrestling champion, and the video of him, whooping Tom Pelissaro has made its rounds on social media. And that was a fun time last year down in Mobile. But give his dad a lot of credit, man. He raised a confident young man. And that's why that kid could go out in Soldier Field the other day and perform the way he did.
What was your scout on Will Levis last year, and he's scheduled to make a start for the Titans, his first of his career, where the reports are he's the starter over Malik Willis since Tannehill can't go against the Falcons. From one rookie who just made his first start in Bagent to Levis, what do you make of Levis's overall makeup?
Yeah, we liked Will a lot. He was one of our top graded quarterbacks last year. I think he was our top graded senior quarterback, and he was dealing with say it was a foot or something. Sometimes guys will have injuries that keep him out of the game, and Will's agent is a friend of the program, if you will. Trust him a lot. So I know Will wasn't able to come down here and compete. But you like the physical stuff. You really like the arm talent. He can really throw it. I think the question will be, and why he probably slipped to the second round was, just some of the instincts, some of the processing. So it'll be interesting. Whereas that's what Tyson Bagent had in spades. He was very, very instinctive player. Reminded me of Tony Romo when I scouted him. Whereas Will's is, the game sped up pretty fast when Will got pressure. Whereas Tyson, it just stayed slow for him. So I'll be interesting to see in his first NFL start, how it goes. But certainly a lot of physical talent. Big, strong, strapped up guy, can really throw it. So we'll see how it goes. But I'm pulling for him. He was I got to know him a little bit during the process last year. Great guy. Really hope he goes out and plays well for the Titans.
Couple of big games this past weekend featuring a lot of guys that were on your preseason watch list for the Reese's Senior Bowl. The early one, the big noon kickoff, was Ohio State and Penn State. A defensive battle in that game. I know there's some big offensive linemen you got your eye on in that one. What was your big takeaway watching those players, but also watching those two teams face off?
A lot of NFL talent. I saw, I want to say it was Dane Brugler from The Athletic put something out where he tiered the players, top 10 guys, top 20 guys, top 100 guys in that game. And I think he had 20 players that could go in the top 100 and based off his rankings. And Dane does a great job. A lot of talent. Marvin Harrison Jr. obviously was the guy watching on TV that popped out. There's a reason why he's being talked about as a top 5 player for this year's draft. And then just a lot of really good matchups. It was really good defensive football. I think that Marvin Harrison Jr. and some of the other guys on the offensive side, kind of overshadow what's being played, defensively at Ohio State. They had a bunch of guys step up. They've got Tommy Eichenberg and Steel Chambers at linebacker. I thought both those guys played well. Lathan Ransom and Josh Proctor at safety for Ohio State. Really good up the middle of that defense. I thought Ohio State's defense played great.
The other big game, Tennessee-Alabama, another game with a lot of guys on your watch list. Specifically, I want to ask about two guys for Alabama, one defense, one offense. Malachi Moore as a defensive back in that star position for Nick Saban, and Jace McClellan at running back.
Yeah, so Jace made, there wasn't a lot of wow plays from Jace, but man, he just kept him ahead of the chains and cranked out yards. And when they needed a couple runs, he made those runs. He's kind of a steady guy. There's not a wow factor of some of the Alabama backs that have come before him, but he is the next guy in line. He is going to play at the next level. I do think he's a 3-down player. And then Malachi Moore, they had Brian Branch last year, who everyone's making a big deal that he slipped to the second round. He didn't run a great 40 time. And I don't know how fast Malachi is going to be. I think Brian's a twitchier athlete. I think a lot of teams are going to project Malachi Moore to safety at the next level because he is a real controlled mover more than a twitchy mover, really instinctive. He really relies on his eyes to make plays. And so I think a lot of teams will see him more as a free safety than a nickel, which is what he's basically been at Alabama. I think most teams will project him to the back end of the defense.
Oregon and Utah with certainly some NFL caliber talent. They face off this weekend, Jim. We haven't talked a lot about Utah throughout the season. Certainly, we
never do.
Yeah. So tell us about the Utes and who you may have an eye on. Plus, of course, Oregon with the firepower. There's a reason why they're favored on the road.
Yeah, we never talk about Kyle Whittingham's team, do we? Until we get to the Rose Bowl, and then we talk to them. Once they get to Pasadena, we talk about them. But no, they're they play a brand of football out there in Salt Lake that would really carry over well east of the Mississippi. They could move out here and play big boy football. They're tough. They're physical. Coach Witt's, you talk about most underrated coaches in the country. I mean, you can count him on one hand. I mean, this guy, he gets those guys ready to play every year. And I think what's being overlooked right now, here they are. You could tell me, I don't know what they're ranked. I know they're ranked up there high. And
13.
They've done it without 13. And they've done it without Cam Rising, who is one of the best senior quarterbacks coming back in the country. Really good player. And Cam hasn't even been on the field. So, they've got a right tackle. His name is, I think it's LeMay. I don't know how you pronounce it. I got to learn his name because he's a really, really good player. But yeah, no, they're talented. They've got players on both sides. So we could go through. They've got 5, 6, 7 guys that we talked about over the last couple of days in our meetings. And they got an Oregon football team coming in that needs a win. Didn't play great last week, coming off that loss to Washington. They did enough to win, but this is a big one. This is a big one for Dan Lanning's team.
Final 15 seconds here. You go anywhere this weekend?
I've been locked in these meetings. I don't know where I'm going.
Okay.
It's a bad answer. I wish I knew.
Well, you get to decide, right? You make the decision.
We've been all locked up. So I know that Louisiana Lafayette comes here to South Alabama. I might just go out there and have it a home game and go out there and see those guys. Louisiana Lafayette's got an offensive lineman we need to look at.
And that's how you find the Tyson Bagents
That's right.
of the Senior Bowl right there. Hey, thanks so much for the visit, man. Get some rest. I know it's been a long 2 days or so.
Yeah, guys. Thanks for having me on. Have an awesome weekend.
Thanks, Jim.
Same to you. There's Jim Nagy of the Reese's Senior Bowl. Always brings it. And as we near the back half of the college football season, things will crank up for the draft as well, all the rumors and everything else that goes along with those quarterbacks. Coming up, primary complaint right here on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow.
I'm here at the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix, but that's not the only big race that's on people's minds. Let's go talk about it.
There's no way Biden can win again. There's just no way. Even the people that voted for him because they didn't like Trump, now at least have to see senile, not all there. Probably won't be alive for 4 more years.
Are you a Trump guy? Or are you a DeSantis guy? Or someone else?
I don't like any of them.
Who's your dream candidate? Who would you want to run?
Myself. I think the best candidates probably are smart enough not to run.
I just hope there's somebody that's young enough to care about the country instead of their politics.
My fear is they get Gavin Newsom from California. I think it would be the new cool vote for the younger people, and that's what I don't like.
Who do you think on the Republican side would be able to take on Gavin Newsom?
Great question. As a Republican registered, I love what Trump's body of work did, but they're just out to get him and destroy him, and we won't get things done, which is crappy for me to say. I thought DeSantis was going to be the guy. Trump only has 4 years left. He cannot fix everything that just happened in 4 years. And he's going to be battling indictments and all these false stuff for the next 4 years. We won't get anything done. And it'll just be the stalemate in America. That's why I almost don't want him in. But if he is the leading candidate, that's who I'm going to vote for.
Is there any Democrat that you would vote for, consider voting for?
Absolutely not.
What about RFK Jr.?
No.
Who should our first female president be?
Michelle Obama, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Harambe 2024.
We have the 2024 presidential race coming up, and I wanted to see who you thought your favorite TV characters would vote for. Homer Simpson, who do you think he would vote for?
Donald Trump, all the way.
Vito Corleone.
Whoa. Whoever advances the cause of the Corleone family. Yeah.
Tony Soprano. If Tony Soprano is voting in the 2024 election, who do you think he's voting for?
I'm going to go Ron DeSantis.
Okay, why do you think that?
Just seems like a Ron DeSantis kind of guy.
Is this a meatball joke that you're trying to make right now? What about Homer Simpson?
Homer would vote for Biden because he's a dope.
Who do you think Napoleon Dynamite would vote for?
That's a good question. I actually don't know.
There's a right answer here.
He's voting for himself or Pedro.
There's a Viking show, I think.
Okay.
Maybe that's Hulu. I don't know.
So in the Viking show, whatever the main character is, who do you think they would vote for in 2024?
Probably a goat or a dog.
I think we have one of those in office right now. So who do you think Jon Snow would vote for in this upcoming election?
I'm gonna say Donald J. Trump.
Why do you think so?
Because Game of Thrones is all about drama, and Trump comes with the drama, baby.
Would you vote for Trump from jail?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably. Because at that point, what else do you have to lose?
Okay, would you vote for Trump from a jail cell?
Yeah, baby, I will get Trump out of jail.
Would you vote for Trump in jail?
Oh, yeah.
Based as
The thing that Trump needs to remember is there's another political figure that said, I don't recall very well.
Yeah.
And that's all he's got to say.
Is there like a dream candidate, someone that you think could like save us all?
Yeah, Jesus.
Amen to that.
Sixth and Peabody, our broadcast location. OutKick studio here for Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow. Yeehaw Beer, Old Smoky Moonshine. Always great, Chad.
Never a bad day for either one of those products.
Never. Throwback with the USFL.
Yeah. I'm honoring the merger with this shirt. We don't have the logo yet for what USFL XFL will look like with the front office sports report, but this is a collector's item now, possibly, if this logo goes away with whatever the new but maybe it will be USFL, and they're actually swallowing up the XFL. Don't know yet.
Maybe they will. I mean, props to them for actually calling it a merger, unlike Live Golf and the PGA Tour.
It's a fun time in Birmingham, Hutton. It's a throwback to the memories of Birmingham, doing shows there, going down for those games.
Yep.
You hanging out with Jeff Fisher, coach of the Michigan Panthers at the time. Fun times. Wanted to honor that with this USFL polo shirt that I soon will be placing for sale on eBay for money when it's a collector's item.
Keep that.
Yeah.
When they do the 30
When
for 30.
I say soon, like 30 years from now.
Yeah.
Vintage USFL polo in the second iteration.
You hand it down to your
from
children.
2021 through 2023 before the merger. Get your vintage USFL coaches polo right here on eBay. That's what I'll be selling 30 years from now.
Coming up,
if I'm still alive.
We'll get into the World Series matchup and much more. Plus, Clay Travis joins us shortly. But first, it is time for Primary Complaint.
It's time to air our top grievance of the week.
You can complain all you want.
My job is so unfulfilling.
Don't run away from your feelings.
It's time for Hot Mic's Primary Complaint.
Guys, my primary complaint this week is just the overuse of coaching malpractice. I hear this over and over and over again, and it's after every terrible decision by any coach across the country at any level. I don't know if we need to say negligence or just say this was awful, but coaching malpractice is used as much as the word narrative is used for any opinion or the assumption that you're pushing the agenda of said program, coach, university, or company. Coaching malpractice, use it, but just let's use it less. It's my primary complaint.
I feel like when I talk about this, one of those old school crusaders against different things for censorship to save our children of America. You got to get rid of this and get rid of that because we got to protect the children and protect society. But I really don't care right now because when I turn on Monday Night Football and I'm watching the Vikings and the 49ers after coaching an 8U softball game and my kids are at the dinner table, the last thing I expect to see the moment they go to commercial is a trailer for a kids' horror movie titled Five Nights at Freddy's. The description of Five Nights at Freddy's, according to Wikipedia, this is the one-paragraph summary. A troubled security guard begins working at Freddy's Fazbear's Pizzeria. While spending his first night on the job, he realizes the late shift at Freddy's won't be so easy to make it through. This is a horror movie based on a video game designed where the animals, the playful animals from Chuck E. Cheese, kill people. They're putting this during Monday Night Football, which at one point I thought the NFL was a family-friendly audience. When you go to that and someone's watching with little kids around, what it forces the parents to do is to go earmuffs and cover the eyes of children that are watching, or scramble and search for the mute function or to turn the television off. That should not happen during major televised events in prime time. I'm all for advertising your sicko horror movies. Do it on YouTube. Do it wherever else you want late night or at horror-adjacent shows where you're going to get it. I also don't like going to the movie theater for Mission Impossible and seeing a trailer for the new Exorcist movie. It's completely out of place with that. Find the right avenues to market these things instead of exposing them to children. Only parents out there will understand what I'm talking about, but parents all right now are nodding their head. Yes, absolutely. You're spot on correct. That is my primary complaint.
Sounds like malpractice.
Well
Chad,
played.
I am also going out there on a limb for the kids. You know, they say Wu-Tang is for the kids. Well, Hot Mic is for the kids. And I was just thinking about, I saw there's a school district that is getting rid of just snow days in general, which it makes sense now, but they're just going to be turned into virtual learning days. So kids don't get to experience snow days anymore. And I look back on my fond memories as a child, waiting the night before thinking a storm's going to come through and there's a good chance that I'm not having to go to school, or on like even a bad case scenario, it's kind of not great weather for the buses to get out early, so we might get an hour or a 2-hour delay. Kids these days don't get to experience that, and I feel for them. So for that reason, that's my primary complaint.
That is very sad to me, that now because of technology, we can have virtual learning days and kids don't get to experience snow days. Now, what I do want guardrails against, which I think is happening, is the extreme on the other end, where school districts are real quick, not just school districts, private schools do it too, real quick to call those snow days way in advance because they have built-in days.
Built in.
They're going to take off anyways. That also, again, this is old dad talking, that puts the parents at an inconvenience when those things happen.
Well, so, Davey, not knowing the schedule here, the calendar, would that allow them to potentially get out earlier so you're out during, or do they take a 2-week holiday where you potentially is snowing? You see what I'm saying?
Not necessarily. I mean, again, like I'm sure it's going to vary from school district to school district. I know whenever I was a kid, there were 10 days that had been built up that we could use on, but I guess you just go to school if that's not the case, or they're going to continue learning, which I don't have a problem with that. I mean, if I were to get up on my horse, I think as America, we're kind of falling behind and making the kids go to school. I mean, you look at the kids in China, I mean, it's like they get, 2 days a year?
Yeah, we're way falling behind there.
I don't exactly view that as a terrible thing, but I get it as far as
the adulation of knowing that you were out of school for snow.
Yeah, it's just that feeling.
And look, the other thing too, it's not even like country to country. Think of it from just region to region, where if there's a dusting, if there's a chance of snow here, school's out. And in in the Northeast, like good luck, you're going. School's not out.
Very litigious society to where the school districts don't even want to have to risk it, especially whenever they're providing public transportation. I worked part-time at a private institution, and like unless there was a blizzard, they weren't getting out because, I mean, it was on the parents to get them to school in a lot of those situations, or whether it wasn't bad enough to where people could not drive. I do know, growing up in East Tennessee, one of the bigger problems, and a lot of people up north don't get this, but before we would get snow, you would just get ice. You can't drive on ice. A little different.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of salt for the roads here. They don't buy it up.
It's
here.
a difference in preparation. Like states up north, they have all the things, all the salt, all the vehicles to clear the roads quickly.
It's every day.
Yeah. So they don't have snow days. Like my nieces in Nebraska laugh about snow days down here. They don't have them. But here's what they do. They start school later and they end earlier because they don't have built-in snow days. So, Hutton, to your point, your question about, are they getting on the back end or the front end if they're not having the snow days? That should be a consideration also.
Surely
Summers are also way shorter now, too. And I think in large part in the South, it's for that reason because they're going to get to those snow days they have penciled in. Whether it snows a lot or not, they're going to get to those days one way or the other. Here's my other conspiracy on this. A sickness day. I think that I've seen school called for sickness, like rampant sickness through the school. And I think that's another clever way to get to those built-in out-of-office days for teachers. Which, look, I'm all for teachers having days off or time off also. It's not a job I envy or I would want, but I think there's different ways to skin that cat to get days off when you have a long school year.
They could do that. When I was in school, if 30% of the student body was not able to attend, like if they had called in or whatever, that's whenever they'd be like, hey, we're going to be out to clean the school and give everybody a little bit of chance to heal up.
That'd be a good way to, especially for high school kids, to orchestrate a day off for everyone. If you had the numbers of your school, especially if you're at a smaller school, you get with your buddies now in a text chain, and you say, on this day, if these people all call in sick, the whole school gets out because this would equal the percentage of what they have to do to call the school day.
My freshman year of high school, the first week, everyone was sent home for suspicious fumes, smells. I never.
Axe body spray.
Whoever smelt it, dealt it. I didn't smell anything. Kids were like getting headaches. Teachers were getting headaches. And they did this week-long test. They had no idea what it was. They didn't know if it was someone, set something off, or if it was the county where I lived was practically, the entire county's on top of a cave for the most part, called Cumberland Caverns. And it's, people thought it was coming from the cave. No, they still, to my knowledge, never figured it out. We had a full week off a week after we started school. And that affected the calendar, going back to the snow days. We ended up having the threat was we're going to have to go over the allotted time to get our days in or go on weekends. We never did that.
Well, what's funny about...
We just took the test.
And I think, you don't realize this as a kid when they're making the decision to call the school day for your entire county.
Yeah.
You're watching the local news and the weather report, weather comes on for snow. You get really excited and you're seeing if your county has the snow going over it where you're going to be out of school. And as a kid, I always think, man, there just must be some huge machine making this decision. There's probably 55 people in on it, and they have to vote so many people, and there's specific protocols in place for how we're calling school. And as you get inside of certain things, I just realized, no, it's like two people just talking on the phone
school
that are on the school board. It's a school superintendent. Right. It's one member.
Called a buddy of his out in the rural area and asked, hey, what does it look like outside?
It's them talking on a group call or something with a rep on the school board with the superintendent, and they're looking at a forecast just like we would. They're not privy to any more weather devices that we don't have. And they're looking at it and saying, oh, we got some snow up here on the plateau.
What's the feels like temperature there?
School's out. We're calling it. Or just, I don't think our parents, or not our parents, I think our teachers need a morale day. So let's go ahead and call it because it's predicted to get a dusting up here close on these hills. So we're going to go ahead and call school for
local
everyone.
News, man. They love two things, weather and school closings, because everyone's tuned in. And if you have the right mascot for it, all the kids want to watch that one mascot.
It's yet another thing that social media has stolen, I think, in many ways from television, is I've never thought to watch local news now for snow updates because it comes to my phone. Because I follow school systems that I need to, or the school that my child goes to, and I'm going to get the update right there immediately. Or the text. You get an automatic text from your school when it happens.
Davey, you were watching the NHL version of NFL Red Zone last night,
I did,
right?
yes.
How was this? Because I don't know how they would handle going to the right game at the right time.
So last night, Frozen Frenzy, which is what ESPN essentially did, where they had all 32 NHL teams play on the same day, and they were staggering the start times to where they were able to go and tune into each individual game. It's not comparable to Red Zone in the fact that you like, oh, they might score here. Now, if there was a power play, they would go in and make sure to give you the access. Yeah, there were a couple of games that went to overtime.
Okay.
And so you were able to kind of get the sneak peek in there. And they had John Bucci-Gross, longtime sports commentator.
He's anchoring this?
Yep.
Oh, that's cool.
And so he was kind of going through it. They did a thing where they had Scott Hansen end up doing like a little promo video because they're trying to get that same feel of red zone. I mean, it's a neat concept. I think one of the things I did this year that I've never done in the past, but I had some friends talk me into doing fantasy hockey. So whenever you have those implications, it was really fascinating to kind of keep tabs on different players. I'd like to see them do it more. I'd be curious to see if the MLB were to try out something like that, or the NBA for that matter. But I anticipate this will happen again soon because it seemed like it was a success based off the initial go at it.
This is made for the NBA. I think more than any other sport. I think this concept would work well with the NBA.
No doubt. Coming up, the World Series is set, and is a retirement happening? That's next on Hot Mic.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna lib. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement. And today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Just like that, the second hour is here for the Wednesday edition of Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network. Fast first hour. Coming up, Clay Travis joins us in 20 minutes. A bit later, Andy Staples of On 3. Looking forward to both.
So news is coming everywhere on this Michigan Connor Stallion
everywhere
scandal, including our YouTube chat, where Richard Salino writes in to our show and says, in the Oregonian today, and you may have known this, but I've not heard this news yet, Michigan analysts went to Autzen Stadium and watched the game against Washington, meaning they already knew, this is the Washington-Oregon game this year, meaning they already knew both of them going to the Big Ten. Unbelievable. I don't see it as them going to the Big Ten as their possible college football playoff opponents. That's what they're scouting in that regard. They're not scouting for next year, knowing the signs will probably change before they get to the Big Ten. That is for playoff competition.
I go back to the paranoia of all this is so one coach in this article from yesterday, Chad, at ESPN with Rittenberg, said that he can get everything he needs as far as hand signals and signs off of 3 to 4 games of the coaching all 22 footage, where you can zoom in, zoom out, and you can see what's going on the field. And if you could compare the TV broadcast to a condensed version to the coach's tape. The coaches are so paranoid. Wouldn't you change up your signals? Like that can't be that difficult. Like or it's like if you're looking down third baseline for your third base coach for the sign of what you're going to do. Sometimes it's the sign after another signal, and then the other trigger for the actual sign is you change that part up, right? Like the fact that all these coaches hate people that come in and watch practice and everything else, the fact that they didn't change these up as often as you would think is also surprising.
I think probably a lot do change their signals, but Michigan's doing it for a reason.
Sure.
So there's someone that's not. I would say most, or at least Tennessee's an example, and you see this sometimes where guys have different colored shirts on the sideline.
Right, yes.
So they have like 4 or 5 people doing signals. So that would be, you'd have to watch really 4, 5, 6 games because there's different ones. It's like the indicator in baseball, the example, the sign. Across the chest, then everything, the next one after that, or the second one after that is the signal. You can change that so many times where it's very difficult to pick off those signals. If you change the person delivering the sign and what color the quarterback's looking at, you would have to scout more in order to get those signals. But if they're doing this, it means it's probably worked at some point, which tells me that, to your question, Hutton, not everyone changes them enough.
Yeah, but it's also got to be very difficult to do it, to change them up midweek going into a big game.
I think it's also got to be difficult to translate it quickly, communication-wise, to your players in the field. Oh, here's a signal. You might have 4 seconds. Okay, that means this, and then preparing the play for that and everything else that goes into it. But again, not to get blinded by the logistics of this, there's a reason Michigan was doing it. So that's what everyone's got to look into. The biggest question that I want answered is we all acknowledge that with a lot of schools, the old, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying type thing. They're going to push the boundary. They're going to push the envelopes of what they can do and what they can get away with. There's no expressly written rule that says don't steal signs, whether it's frowned upon or not, which it sounds like it's not even really frowned upon because it's not a rule. But what is a rule is not scouting off-site. So how many programs are doing it this way, the exact same way Michigan is? Are they the outlier in this? How many are doing it in a way that's more clandestine and getting away with it? I don't know that we'll ever know the answer to this other than coaches just telling stories in a back room about what goes on. But I would love for more to go on the record about exactly what's happening out there before you can really draw the conclusion on Michigan and what the punishment should be. I'd like to know how prevalent this is across college football. Because, again, while some are saying, man, this seems pretty far-fetched, what they were doing, they're going above and beyond, I'm not hearing a lot of coaches coming out and saying, Jim Harbaugh is really wrong for doing this, or this is really crazy what's going on. There's not a lot of comments that extreme about it. So Need to know more about the entire atmosphere around stealing signs in college football before drawing any conclusions. But it looks bad for Michigan regardless, that they had a guy on staff doing this that seemed to be just hired only to do these things.
Chad, things are bad as well for the USC Trojans. They're not winning big football games, and USC football is never boring. Lincoln Riley is under doctor's orders staying at home. We begin our Scorched Earth headlines on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow. Staying at home, and Cliff Kingsbury elevated to the spot, the head coaching spot, as they take on Cal this upcoming weekend on the road. How about that? Coming off of back-to-back losses, and now Lincoln Riley with an illness under doctor's orders, told to stay at home and not coach the team.
It's
when it rains, it pours.
Yeah, and I hate that my mind went here, but I don't know if yours did, Hutton. When I saw that he was missing his coaching show for a sickness, my immediate thought was convenient that they're not allowing players to speak after the loss, and now suddenly the coach has come down with an illness, and he's not going to speak on his coach's show. He's clearly, obviously sick.
He's missed 2 practices.
Yeah, we wish him well. There's clearly an actual illness going on here with Lincoln Riley, so hopefully he gets better. But, you know, this is – remember when everything went on with Lane Kiffin and Nick Saban and Lane Kiffin leaving for FAU and all the back and forth about how Lane Kiffin didn't handle it correctly according to Coach Saban? And remember who they had on staff that was able to call plays for them? Wasn't it Steve Sarkisian? That was an analyst?
Oh, yes.
That they called up? I mean, hell of a luxury that Cliff Kingsbury, regardless of what you thought about his work with the Arizona Cardinals, is on staff as an analyst that you can call up from the minors to be an assistant coach on game day and help you call plays or help with your offense. Same luxury that Nick Saban had when Lane Kiffin was flirting with Florida Atlantic. Or I think he took the job. He was just doing too much recruiting and work for the next job. Where, remember, Kirby Smart handled it correctly when he took the job, so he got to stay on and coach for Alabama in the national championship, but Lane Kiffin didn't.
Kiffin couldn't do it.
I'm thinking.
He was too involved.
I get it. You want to see it through with the team you're on when you're playing for everything. I also think it's a little, over the top in those instances that the head coach doesn't understand as a head coach, this guy's got to get to work at their next job quickly as well. And they got to do a little bit of both.
They have assistant coach Dennis Simmons, who's running the program, and then Cliff Kingsbury is just the analyst and consultant who is stepping up into the role of working with Caleb Williams and running that offense as they take on Cal. I mean, if you look ahead to their schedule, Chad, there's 2 more losses on there, and it's based on the defense and the inept defense at that. They can't tackle. Not even they can't cover. They can't tackle. It's a gauntlet. This week shouldn't be one of them.
No.
I'm tempted on wrong team favored, though. I am.
Please give me all the hints that you can about what you're thinking, because I need one winner at some point this season. There's got to be a change defensive coordinator after this season. I don't see any way around it now. I don't love calling for people's jobs, but if you're Lincoln Riley, you're recruiting at a high level. You've got the offense. You've had the quarterback. You're not going to win anything of consequence with Caleb Williams because they could have won a conference title a year ago, but they lost the Pac-12 championship, and they had Jordan Addison and Caleb Williams on that team. When you look at what Jordan Addison's doing right now with the Vikings, lost that Pac-12 championship to Utah. Defense is holding them back now. Offense wasn't great against Notre Dame or Utah either, but it's defense that's the problem. They gotta make a change.
And they're just reading columnists and reporters that are following the program every day. The majority believe it's not just one coaching change that corrects this, that actually puts USC in the real national championship contender slot, even in a 12-team playoff. Like they can make the playoff, but not really hoist the trophy, is what they mean, just by one coaching change, because it's more of a recruiting philosophy. And Lincoln Riley didn't have great defenses at Oklahoma. It was they were hard. Remember that Texas game?
Yeah,
where it was 50. What was it? 55 to 53 or something like. It kind of follows him Certain coaches just don't lean into the defensive side.
Well, and when you're a guy that you made your bones calling offensive plays, like Lincoln Riley did, and you're known as this offensive guru, it's very difficult to then have an identity of toughness and defensive play mixed with an explosive offense. It's usually all or nothing. They need some of that, and you're right. It's not going to take one coaching change to do that, but it feels like a program right now. Not that this isn't A&M a year ago where they're hitting rock bottom or anything, and they need a complete reset, but they do need a tweak in their attitude and how that program is managed and how it's run and everything else. Here's what I'll also say about USC football. It is tough when your brand is Hollywood in Southern California and it's Snoop Dogg and Will Ferrell on the sideline to suddenly become a tough-minded football program. That becomes your identity of hard-hitting, good defensive players. We're more physical. We're tougher than our opponent. Kyle Whittingham has that with Utah. He's attracting those types of dudes to Utah that are overlooked by USC, quite frankly, in recruiting rankings that maybe aren't as talented as other, but they've got an identity there. If you want to shift your mindset and mentality to be tougher, to be more physical, I think it's tough to do at USC unless you have the right dudes leading it. Here's an example. Pete Carroll, when he was the coach there, he's Hollywood. He's a surfer-looking guy. He brought all the celebrities back on the sideline. He also had, was it All Out Wednesday or Thursday or whatever it was, where they would go full pads, and they had future first-round draft picks knocking the piss out of each other in practice and suffering injuries in practice. But he did it for a couple reasons. One, he knew he recruited well enough to have the depth to replace guys if needed, if someone got hurt. And two, to make his program tougher and up the competition level at USC. That's what Lincoln Riley needs. That's what this program needs, is an injection of that mentality.
But the mentality starts with Lincoln Riley realizing that you have, like the media policy from earlier this year. You're in Los Angeles. All eyes are on the Trojan program from a college football standpoint. The national relevancy of USC. That's what Pete Carroll also leaned into during that era. So, like, you're in Hollywood. The media attention will be there. And instead of, not the players not being available, whatever, the coaches show last night certainly raised an eyebrow until you hear about the illness. But, Chad, beyond that, just the media policy of not being able to say that a freshman was kind of upset and nervous about a media interview.
Yeah.
And his dad confirming it and thinking it was funny. And that's what got a reporter suspended. In that market, come on. With this program,
it's also,
this program's been about flash and pizzazz and entertainment. And
well, it extends past that. Remember, after the loss to Utah, they had no one talk to the media.
Well, that's what I said. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they banning the players too from doing it.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
on
top of the banning the journalist who got that quote. It's just,
but it's different. Like,
but what's the one word that comes to mind when you hear those stories?
Soft.
Yes, bingo, and that's what the program. That's the perception. Hudden, you say all the time, perception is reality, and I look at that and I think that is a soft program that you lose a game and you can't put players out in front of the media to talk about.
But their offense, they do all the things right offensively that have the entertainment value and the flash and the plays that players across the country either want to transfer in for or want to go straight out of high school with. But it's a finesse approach, and that carries over even with the media policies.
It's hard to flip. It's hard to flip who you are. And I just think it's a more difficult spot right now for Lincoln Riley than some may assume.
You could do that in Norman, Oklahoma, right?
Yeah, and it's not just, it could be as simple as just hire a new defensive coordinator and it's fixed. But I think it goes deeper than that. They definitely need to do that. They need to change their approach defensively, and that's going to take a new leader on defense. But I think there may be more that needs to happen here with the direction of the program to get tougher. And it starts with Lincoln Riley getting tougher And it probably starts with, making your players or allowing them to speak to the media and not shutting it down because they lose a game.
Tough situation for Chris Mad Dog Russo, who said he would retire if the Diamondbacks were going to win 2 games against the Phillies. And turns out they did. Arizona's in the World Series. Mad Dog has not retired yet. I'm sure SiriusXM is thrilled by this.
Yeah, he don't want to retire. It's funny because he went on TV on MLB Network right before the game, and the reporter asked him about that. And he said, now I want to be clear, I'm retiring from radio. I said on my radio show I'd retire from there, from SiriusXM, but I'm still going to do my TV hits. I'm still going to come on here in First Take. I'm not retiring from TV, retiring from radio. So before the game started, he didn't come back and say, I got a little carried away and I want to keep working. He didn't say any of that. He was still holding true to, I'm just retiring from radio. And then when the Diamondbacks win, which I knew was going to happen, he goes on Howard Stern's show and has Howard Stern come up with a punishment that's not retiring. Basically, let me off the hook here. What's something I can do because I want to keep working?
It involves
running in a bikini on a street in New York City. Out on Times
Richard
Square.
and Sal and ping pong balls.
Yeah, and making a donation to an Arizona Diamondbacks charity of choice. Because the Diamondbacks picked it up and ran with it. They were talking about it post-game.
Got to do something with Benji.
Their manager is saying, retire, when asked about it. I hope he retires. I hope he sticks to his word. We all want to see that.
Coming up, Clay Travis joins us on Hot Mic with Hunter Withrow across
retiring.
the OutKick Network.
Dabo Swinney ripping his own fans. Dabo Swinney at Clemson is, I don't know, they tell me that he's the guy that doesn't like the transfer portal because he's made some comments that weren't exactly supportive of it. Dabo Swinney has done a job at Clemson that very few thought could be done. Clemson is a town about this big. Well, I better do this, not that, because that's like a white power sign idiots say. But it's about that big. The state is South Carolina. The state is not Clemson. But Dabo Swinney put Clemson in rarefied air. If you, a couple years ago, were going to name me the 3 best college football teams before Georgia's run here, you'd say Alabama, Ohio State, and Clemson. That's kind of who it always came down to. It felt like. So Dabo Swinney is now the victim of something that is good in one way, but it's bad in another. Incredible expectations of your fan base, meaning 10-2 ain't good enough. It just ain't. You can say whatever you want, but it just ain't. We got to be better. What? We're not in the college football playoff? What? We're not winning a national champion? What? We're 4-2? That's only winning 67% of our games? Here's what Dabo had to say. If you don't go undefeated, people say you're losers, that you're terrible. Let me tell you something. This is why football coaches for years and years and years and years fought the college football playoff. We're at a point in time, and I hate that, where people, if you don't go undefeated, you're losers. You're terrible. It's just a terrible mindset. Honestly, maybe we need to lose a few games and lighten up the bandwagon. Sometimes the bandwagon get a little full. That's the one good thing about going through a little bit of so-called adversity is that you really find out who's with you and who's not. That's all crap. Let me explain to you Dabo Swinney's day, can I? Dabo Swinney probably wakes up around 5:30. Dabo Swinney smokes shit, shower, shave, shampoo, goes to the office. Probably has a meeting at 7. Dabo Swinney then is probably in different meetings with players or recruits or maybe the administration going and maybe watching film. Whatever. Then he has practice. Then after practice, he's doing the same thing. Then in the evening, he's making phone calls. Probably goes home around 10. At no point in time in his day, his week, his month, his year, is he finding out who's with us and who's not with us. It's not like there's a list. Now, maybe you find out what media member wants to rip you, but on a daily basis, a monthly basis, you're not finding out any of this crap. It's very simple. Coaches, if you want to know who's with you, understand that when you lose, nobody's really with you. If you want to know who's really with you, win. and then everybody's really with you. It's literally that simple. As my father used to say to me, Dan, we're with you, win or tie, and we ain't so sure about the tie. So shut up with that stuff, win some football games, and don't sweat it. Seriously, do yourself a favor. Work hard, grab yourself a glass of wine, go sit in your chair, and read a book instead of being on social media or worrying about who is with you and who is not with you.
Sixth and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. We'll connect in a moment with Clay Travis, getting him on the phone right now. Chad, Brock Purdy is in concussion protocol for the San Francisco 49ers, and it's unlikely that he's playing this week and clearing protocol for the matchup at home against the Cincinnati Bengals. Crazy game there because you've got the 49ers back-to-back losses. Of course, Cincinnati started slow, and they need to get it going with Burrow, Joe Cool and company. So looks like Sam Darnold be the starter.
Well, I wonder if they it would have been Trey Lance, which is interesting, right? Probably before the season, before the trade. Man, that's tough. Brock Purdy off to an MVP level start, and then this happens now. He's going to be at Sam Darnold in San Francisco. Not something I expected to say coming into the season.
Clay Travis joins us, founder of OutKick. The reason we're here with Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow. Clay, hope you're doing well, man.
Yeah, what was that news? I just heard the tail end. Brock Purdy's out for how long?
He's in concussion protocol. And I'm assuming, I mean, it's very difficult to clear concussion protocol before the next game if you go into it midweek. So, yeah, it would be Sam Darnold starting for the 49ers, trying to avoid 3 straight losses as they take on Cincinnati at home.
Well, I'm glad I took the Bengals plus 5.5 then. But that's one of my picks. But Brock Purdy, you know, I don't know if we ever talked about this. I'm in a super high-end fantasy league where everybody pays an exorbitant amount of money to be able to compete against each other. Kelly Stewart, who you guys have on, Kelly in Vegas, is in that league. Todd Furman, Scott Van Pelt, several people in sports media. Cousin Sal, my buddy from our gambling show. Anyway, Brock Purdy is my quarterback, and I already had to go to Brock Purdy because I had Aaron Rodgers and he tore his Achilles. So I'm going to be on a third quarterback here and what has otherwise been a very good team so far.
You're going to pick up Sam Darnold now that he's in for Brock Purdy? Is that the move for you?
Well, I don't know. I tried to pick up Geno Smith. There's not a lot of great available quarterbacts, let's be honest.
Go grab Will Levis.
Yeah, Will Levis may be your play, Clay.
Yeah, that's I'd rather, hit my big toe with a hammer.
I feel like Connor Stallions might want to hit his big toe with a hammer right now with this Michigan controversy going on. Clay, we've been talking about it a lot from many different angles, and I feel like the only defense for Michigan right now is trying to prove in some way or just state that, hey, everyone does this in some capacity or another, and showing the NCAA and showing, I guess, America that that's how it goes down? Or do you think this is so far above and beyond of what they're now proving has happened with Michigan that there is no defense for it?
Yeah, I would just stay quiet, personally, and dare the NCAA, the Big Ten, and Michigan to do anything. And let me break it down. Michigan's going to do nothing, all right? If you are the president of Michigan or you sit on the board of trustees, Michigan has won 1/2 of a national championship in the last 25 years. They are right now the Vegas favorite to win the championship. They're 8-0. you will get removed from office if Michigan does anything to impede in any way this championship run. The Big Ten has got a brand new commissioner that has only been there for like a year. That commissioner will never recover in the eyes of Michigan fans from instituting some form of punishment on Michigan. Finally, the NCAA is an impotent, worthless organization with no power to do anything. They're not going to do anything. And if they do anything, it'll be like 8 years from now. So nothing's going to happen. And I don't know why all these people out there are like, oh, Michigan's in for it now. No, they're not. I mean, Auburn played Cam Newton. They won the national title. Anyone that has a functional brain knows that Auburn cheated and Cam Newton got paid. And they just said, prove we did something wrong, and kept playing him. And so I would imagine that'll happen. I mean, heck, Brandon Miller brought a loaded handgun to a murder scene, but Alabama thought they might be able to win a national championship in basketball. It wasn't even football. And they kept playing him. Like, no one is Terrell Pryor, like, no one is benching a national championship winning team. That's just not going to happen. And if the NCAA tried to do something, do you know what the best thing you could do in the state of Michigan would be in terms of being an attorney general or a politician? It would be to sue the NCAA or to sue the Big Ten. So even if they tried to do something, I guarantee you the attorney general of Michigan, I don't even know where Gretchen Whitmer went to school, but Michigan is the straw that stirs the drink school in the state. You will win if you defend the University of Michigan every bit of the elections that you could possibly ever desire to win. So my point on this is nothing's happening.
Clay, do you think that they got a competitive advantage from this? Do you think they would be doing this
I don't know.
unless they were getting a competitive advantage from it?
Yeah, I think it's hard to know until you were able to actually dive into it. If you got that much of a competitive advantage from doing it, I think everybody would do it. I watched Deion talk about it. I don't know if you guys ever played the clip from Deion where he was like, even if you know exactly what a team is going to run, it's still hard oftentimes to stop them. I don't think that if you look at Michigan, they haven't given up more than 10 points to anybody so far this year. I don't think that that is so successful that that's the reason why they are dominant on the defensive side of the ball. And I think you can tell a lot of things formationally by who's on the field, right? On 3rd and 8, you're going to throw the football. On 3rd and 1, you're probably going to run the football. A lot of what you would, be able to analyze from a play calling perspective is baked in based on down and distance and probability. And so I don't know how much of a benefit they would be able to get. And by the way, if you thought that they were, why wouldn't you change your signals?
Yeah.
Right. Like if you really thought, oh my goodness, they know our signals, they know exactly what we're doing on every play, why wouldn't you decide to alter your signals? It doesn't seem like that would be insanely difficult to do. And then remember, I mean, this is college football we're talking about. Every quarterback stands and looks over at his sideline just about to see what play call is going to come in, right? So there's a lot of adjustment going on. Both teams are standing, both the defense and the offense, and looking to opposite sides to see how to respond and react based on formation. So I tend to think that this is probably overplayed.
Don't you just eliminate any talk of this by putting a radio device in the helmet of the quarterback like they've done in the NFL since 1994?
Yeah, that's what should happen. I mean, I don't understand why you wouldn't do it. Look, there are some things where I would say, oh yeah, that's a clear competitive advantage, right? For instance, if you were tapping into headsets when you were at home and you were hearing what the other side was saying during the course of their deliberations, I think most people would say, oh my goodness, yeah, that's clearly cheating. Trying to steal signals, doing everything you can to watch, prior games and try to be able to get that information. To me, that is, I have not seen anything where I think, oh, Michigan would have stunk without doing this.
Well, the one area where I think this could extend beyond Michigan football and Jim Harbaugh is this. I do think that they were getting a competitive advantage if they continue to do this. I don't think they were doing it for nothing. They were getting something from having someone on each side
it's
filming
so
it.
competitive. The college football is so competitive, and the coaches switch from teams so frequently. I really think if they were getting a massive competitive advantage, everyone would be doing this.
Well, and it doesn't take a massive competitive advantage to go from covering the spread to not covering the spread. And we know there's always issues with gaming commissions with Iowa and Iowa State players, even if they're betting on their own teams or they're betting on sports on campus, that there's going to be sports gambling agencies looking into it. That would be the one piece of this, and I don't know how you prove it, Clay, unless you have them in written communication talking about all the signals they got and the plays they made to reverse that and the points that it created for doing that or lack of points before you have an issue with the integrity of those games being compromised because of it. That's the part of it I think is very difficult to prove one way or the other.
Yeah, but I think, I would say I'm a gambler, and I presume that everybody's doing everything they can to win. So I'm more troubled when it comes to competitive integrity when somebody is making a decision. Like, doing everything you can to win is actually, to me, a strong sign of competitive integrity. When somebody I get fired up, and where I think it becomes very significant is when somebody is shaving points, that is trying to make sure that their team, you're trying to not perform at your absolute highest level, or when an official has money on a game and he is then making a different calls than he otherwise would. To me, what Michigan is doing is going at the absolute apex. Now, it's like Tom Brady getting footballs inflated to a level that the NFL didn't like. Might it make the Patriots more likely to have won? Yes, but that is them doing everything they can to win, which is what I would expect a team to be doing, as opposed to perform at their absolute apex, even if they're pushing the letter of the law and the rules. As opposed to shaving and officiating malfeasance. Those are issues that I think stand out. I want, this is like, do you have an issue with I always think it's an interesting question. Like, why should players not be able to bet on themselves? Like, betting against yourself, I'm like, oh man, well, we can't really have that. Betting on, if you're Floyd Mayweather and betting that you're going to win a boxing match, I don't have a problem with the fighters or the athletes putting every ounce of themselves, including their own money, on the line.
Clay, do you buy into the conspiracy theory that the reason why Bijan Robinson had one carry last week with 33 seconds to go in the fourth quarter, he played 13 snaps, had one carry, was because of the sports gambling aspect of the NFL and the online apps that certainly didn't want to provide refunds for not seeing Bijan Robinson on the injury report?
No, I don't think that Arthur Smith or the Falcons think about the gambling aspect. I think they're worried about the fact that they hid that injury, it appears, and wanted to say, oh, no, he was fine to play. And as evidence, they point to that running play. That, to me, is it seems like they were playing games with the injury report, which is pretty significant in terms of the way they're bound by rules. And I think wasn't it like back in the day, you guys may remember, didn't Bill Belichick list every player as questionable every week
during the week?
Year?
Yep. Yeah, he would have a lengthy
and so
one.
then the NFL, every player would be questionable. And there was no requirement that you have to be honest back in the day. And then the NFL said, no, there'll be punishments if you decide to not be honest about your injury report. And so I think that's probably what the Falcons were afraid of.
Clay, what is the blood bank guarantee this week for you?
I think Tennessee's going to blow Kentucky out. The line, I don't know what the latest number is. I haven't checked it today, but it was around 3.5. I think Tennessee's going to win by double digits, maybe 2 touchdowns. Blood bank guarantee this week is the Vols on the road at Kentucky.
Chad, your thoughts?
Hopefully they get a more favorable whistle than they did in Tuscaloosa because that was atrocious. I've never seen ball spotting issues the way I saw with Tennessee, specifically on one side and not the other, the way I saw in that game, Clay.
Yeah, it was ugly. Look, my big issue with officials is never with, hey, did he get 2 feet down? Was it a fumble or was it not? Judgment calls. They change the outcome of games all the time, and we allow it to happen. Even, take it outside of the Tennessee-Alabama game. The game between the Eagles and the Dolphins where Jalen Hurts gets lightly tapped, appears to basically flop, and it's roughing the passer. Or the pass interference call on the Colts on the final drive against the Browns. There's no way to defend that. It shouldn't happen. And when you get one of those judgment calls wrong, to me, you should be able to get it taken off the board because they're so incredibly important in terms of the outcome.
Clay Travis has been our guest. More coming. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network. Thanks, Clay.
I'm here at the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix, but that's not the only big race that's on people's minds. Let's go talk about it.
There's no way Biden can win again. There's just no way. Even the people that voted for him because they didn't like Trump, now at least have to see senile, not all there. Probably won't be alive for 4 more years.
Are you a Trump guy? Or are you a DeSantis guy? Or someone else?
I don't like any of them.
Who's your dream candidate? Who would you want to run?
Myself. I think the best candidates probably are smart enough not to run.
I just hope there's somebody that's young enough to care about the country instead of their politics.
My fear is they get Gavin Newsom from California. And I think it would be the new cool vote for the younger people, and that's what I don't like.
Who do you think on the Republican side would be able to take on Gavin Newsom?
Great question. As a Republican registered, I love what Trump's body of work did, but they're just out to get him and destroy him, and we won't get things done, which is crappy for me to say. I thought DeSantis was going to be the guy. Trump only has 4 years left. He cannot fix everything that just happened in 4 years. And he's going to be battling indictments and all these false stuff for the next 4 years. We won't get anything done. And it'll just be the stalemate in America. That's why I almost don't want him in. But if he is the leading candidate, that's who I'm going to vote for.
Is there any Democrat that you would vote for, consider voting for?
Absolutely not.
What about RFK Jr.?
No.
Who should our first female president be?
Michelle Obama, of course. Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to go with Harambe 2024.
We have the 2024 presidential race coming up, and I wanted to see who you thought your favorite TV characters would vote for. Homer Simpson, who do you think he would vote for?
Donald Trump, all the way.
Vito Corleone.
Whoa. Whoever advances the cause of the Corleone family. Yeah.
Tony Soprano. If Tony Soprano is voting in the 2024 election, who do you think he's voting for?
I'm gonna go Ron DeSantis.
Okay. Why do you think that?
Just seems like a Ron DeSantis kind of guy.
Is this a meatball joke that you're trying to make right now? What about Homer Simpson?
Homer would vote for Biden because he's a dope.
Who do you think Napoleon Dynamite would vote for?
That's a good question. I actually don't know.
There's a right answer here.
He's voting for himself or Pedro. There's a Viking show, I think.
Okay.
Maybe that's Hulu. I don't know.
So in the Viking show, whatever the main character is, who do you think they would vote for in 2024?
Probably a goat or a dog.
I think we have one of those in office right now. So who do you think Jon Snow would vote for in this upcoming election?
I'm going to say Donald J. Trump.
Why do you think so?
because Game of Thrones is all about drama, and Trump comes with the drama, baby.
Would you vote for Trump from jail?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably. Because at that point, what else do you have to lose?
Okay, would you vote for Trump from a jail cell?
Yeah, baby, I will get Trump out of jail.
Would you vote for Trump in jail?
Oh, yeah.
Based as
The thing that Trump needs to remember is there's another political figure that said, I don't recall very well. Yeah. And that's all he's got to say.
Is there like a dream candidate, someone that you think could like save us all?
Yeah, Jesus.
Amen to that.
Sixth and Peabody, our location. Yeehaw Beer, Old Smoky Moonshine. Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. Coming up in 20 minutes, Andy Staples from On 3 will be with us.
I just looked down at my phone and
we're in a text with Clay.
We're in a text. I don't know if Clay's responded to our text. Oh, okay, maybe he has. But I just got a Facebook message from someone watching, and all I saw was pop up my phone. No clue the context. Just says Clay's view on Michigan is like his view on Trump. I don't even know what that means. I don't even know what they're equating to with that. But that's interesting.
Forge ahead.
Clay's view on Michigan. One aspect of it I completely agree with, and I don't think, Hutton, we've ever argued that Michigan should self-impose something right now,
No.
They need to suspend Jim Harbaugh. They're going to not mess with this season and the run they're on. They're trying to win a national title, and they've got a team that could do it. So they're not going to do anything. Hutton, you posed the question because you're right. The one person who could do something now to truly affect Michigan in this season where they have a chance at winning a national title would be Tony Petitti, Big Ten commissioner. That's not going to happen either. It's going to take months, maybe years, before the NCAA decides on anything, one way or the other. By that point, Jim Harbaugh is likely gone to the NFL. And whatever happens is going to fall on Michigan and their future coach with scholarship reductions or fines or whatever it may be. But it's unlikely that it's going to fall on Jim Harbaugh. Now, to Clay's second point about I just assume that everybody's doing everything to win, and if that includes cheating, I'm assuming that's going on. I think that's stretching the bounds of what's acceptable in sport a little bit too much. He was on a roll, so I couldn't throw this back in there, but are we okay with what the Astros were doing? Because technically every team could have been doing the same. Had they thought about it and gone to those lengths, or is what they did beyond the bounds of what most people would find acceptable in competition? That's the big question now with Michigan. And maybe some people are reading the story and saying it's not beyond the bounds. I think a lot of other people are doing it. I think they're doing the exact same thing, and I don't really care. I think most, though, are looking at it and saying this seems like it's a big leap for Michigan to have this guy employed by the university to do just this and what they're doing.
The biggest question behind the scenes I'd love to know is why now? And Chad, we got into this, but the NCAA alerted the Big Ten and Michigan of this investigation last Wednesday. And to know that, but also point to the fact that they're investigating it based on allegations made by member institutions, right? Or coaches, whatever. Why the timing of it exactly now? And it's to disrupt the season that they're having, to make sure that what happened earlier, like last year or whatever happened this year, doesn't happen on the back end of their schedule. I don't know. But whatever it was, definitely threw the bait in the water for all of those that have sideline video of Michigan and Connor Stallions and can identify who he is and who he's with, to go and search every piece of tape that they had, in the back room of a newsroom. And the timing of it's interesting.
So
Because
To answer that question,
the NCAA, I mean, they wouldn't have announced their investigation until they were actually starting it based on the allegations that came forward.
To answer that question, I need to know who reported Michigan. We know that there's at least 2 Big Ten programs that have done it.
Yes.
If it's Ohio State,
the assumption is Rutgers is one.
Ohio,
right?
if Ohio State's the other, of course that makes sense. Anything to throw some blood in the water and muddy things up in this season where they're playing so great, and given they've beaten Ohio State 2 years in a row and they're going to play later in the season, well, that makes sense as to why now. So I don't know the answer to your question, Hutton, but thoughtfully considering it, I can't answer it unless I know the programs that reported them. And was it just Big Ten programs, or did Tennessee, Clemson,
good question,
others that were Washington, Oregon, as we heard, the Oregonian report? Did these programs that were getting scouted a year ago as possible college football playoff opponents, did they also report Michigan? I guarantee you they're at least fielding questions from the NCAA about it, what they know about it also. Did they see someone there? So I don't know why now until I know who all reported them. If it's Ohio State, I think the answer is pretty clear as to why now in the middle of this season for Michigan.
Brock Purdy is in concussion protocol for the 49ers as they prepare on a short week after a Monday night loss in Minnesota. Short week as they host Cincinnati and the Bengals this upcoming Sunday. And the line has moved from 5.5, which Clay said he took the Bengals at 5.5, to now 3.5. 49ers still the favorite with Purdy in concussion protocol. 49ers by 3.5 currently, and Sam Darnold preparing to be the starter on Sunday. If you haven't taken your shot with PointsBet, now's the perfect moment. The big reason why, exclusively for first-time PointsBet users, you can grab this unique offer. Up to $1,000 in second chance bets for new PointsBet users. If your first bet doesn't go as planned, PointsBet has your back with a second chance. Get this offer by visiting OutKick.com/bet. You complete the registration process with PointsBet and make your first bet. And here's where we can explain the second chance for you. If your first bet happens to lose, that's when the second chance bets come into play. Remember, terms and conditions apply. You got to be 21 or older in legal gambling states. Gambling problem, 1-800-GAMBLER. Head over to OutKick.com/bet right now to snag this offer. Not often do you see where the Giants, or what the Giants are doing, where they're hiring a division rival's manager and were granted permission to interview said manager. Bob Melvin to the Giants, leaving the Padres.
That to me shows the Padres' failures this year with that payroll. They're looking for a way out.
But it's just I don't know, man. If your rival was like, interview this person we don't want, you would hire them?
It's weird for the Giants.
And it happens in sports all the time,
It's
right?
weird for the
Fired
Giants.
head coaches get rehired all the time. But I don't know. It's just optics there. Just whatever.
Well, it's not even a fired head coach. It's a sitting head coach.
Who they
wanted to fire.
Right.
Who instead found another job within the division, which had to raise red flags with the Giants organization, saying, why are they so okay with us interviewing this guy? And they're not going to fight it at all. And it may just be the Giants saying, hey, we think this guy's a good manager. It was the wrong fit there.
Yeah.
Things soured, and he's going to be just fine here. And we're going to be on the winning end of this within the division. They could be saying that too. I mean, the last former Giants manager, that went on to something different, and Padres guy. Padres, Giants, now Rangers, the guy by the name of Bruce Bochy. So maybe Bob Melvin is next on that list to go Padres, Giants, and now the Giants are about to win 3 more World Series over the course of a decade the way they did in the 2010s. Maybe that's what this is all lining up to happen.
Chad, if you look over, Davey Hudson has his leg propped up. Not because he's comfortable. He's probably very uncomfortable after he had
I walked in today
procedure. But
he had a procedure on his foot done, but he had like athletic shorts on and flip flops. And I said, "Is this casual Wednesday?"
Yeah.
In here, we implementing casual Wednesday, not casual
Leisure
Friday.
Wear. It's time to get weird with Let's Get Weird with Davey Hudson.
And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Talking now.
I didn't want to be the guy wearing jeans and flip-flops. I've never respected that man, and so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and just wear gym shorts.
So you don't like Kenny Chesney? Who else?
I like Kenny. I guess if
You
that's
don't-
what he
you just don't
does, I don't
you don't
respect
respect
him. Yeah, so But no, it is cool.
Sure, no problem.
They said, based off the procedure, make sure to wear open-toed shoes for at least the next 24 hours. So we will do that.
I think maybe Matthew McConaughey also has done that before. Jeans and flip-flops or sandals.
I might have to change my stance if that's the case.
I think he wears boots more often
Davey
now
doesn't go to the
on
beach.
Texas sidelines.
Not a big beach guy.
Clearly.
Is Matthew McConaughey going to work again, by the way, or is he just with the Texas football program now? I'd like to see him in something.
Isn't he teaching a
He's the
class at the semester this year?
He's the director of culture for the city of Austin.
Well, it's been rumored he's going to do something with Taylor Sheridan on a Yellowstone spinoff now that Costner's out for a while. I don't know that they've started work on that. Of course, everybody's striking also, which makes that hard. So.
These flip-flops do have a bottle opener on them, so it's like the one cool thing.
Corona ready.
Yes.
Kenny Chesney would love that.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned Matthew McConaughey. He played an attorney in the movie A Time to Kill. So he was
Jake Brigance.
He was an attorney, but in real life, he's not an attorney. Well, in Kenya, for our first story, a man has been arrested after faking to be an attorney. But here's the kicker. He did win his first 26 cases.
So this really casts some doubts on the Kenyan criminal justice
Very
system.
much so. Brian Mawinda, probably mispronouncing the last name.
Yeah, it's not a great look for the Kenyan criminal justice system that, and they even go with like the wigs, like in British Parliament, when they argue cases, which I do respect that. But smart guy. Hey, I think that, look, there's good and bad of everyone. I could see someone training themselves in law enough and not going to law school or being a certified lawyer and succeeding in some way in the courtroom. So congrats to him.
But to
So
understand
he's winning his mock trials that aren't mock trials.
Understand all the procedure, having not, I'm assuming he was at least researching how to go about these cases on the internet to try to gather some knowledge to where he wouldn't seem too incompetent. But obviously it worked out. But I'm with you, Chad. I think it probably is a bigger stain on the justice system of the country of Kenya. It reminds me, though, of My Cousin Vinny, you know, where Joe Pesci's character, Vinny Gambini, is like, yeah, Jerry Gallo. And then
he hadn't passed the bar yet, right, in that movie?
I'm trying to think back to.
Or did he pass the bar?
I just don't think he legally practiced anymore. I could be wrong. But whenever the judge is like, Jerry Gallo's day, he's like, yeah, of course so. I said Jerry Callo, Callo. And I just love that scene.
It's a great movie. I revisited it in the last 6 months. And it holds up, My Cousin Vinny.
Well, what this guy did to where he got arrested was there was an actual attorney named Brian Mawinda. This guy's not actually Brian Mawinda, but he went into the system where I guess they had certain people that had passed the Kenyan bar is the best way I could describe it.
He took his identity.
He just basically took that identity, hacked into the back end, and uploaded his pictures for that guy's pictures. And the guy who was the real Brian Mawinda, based off his current position, wasn't something to where he never needed to be on that site. And so a long time had gone by before he actually got on the site and realized he didn't have access to it anymore. And that's whenever this was first realized, hey, there's something fishy going on here.
I just my big takeaway from this is Chad respects powdered wigs. Is what he said.
I do. I really do. I think when you play dress up to go into court and you put on a wig and a robe like that and whatever that weird wonky tie is, I respect. I stand on ceremony is what I'm trying to say. And I respect the ceremony of going into a courtroom while putting on a wig and playing dress up. I kind of like it.
I could be off on this, but I believe that practice started because of balding and that they didn't want to have like bald heads. Like there was a...
Because of balding? So it's just like the hair club for men of the 1600s?
Yes. And there might have been some rumors at the time that, I mean, if you were going bald, it could have been due to like an STD.
Remember the John Adams miniseries? It
sounds right, but
on HBO?
I wouldn't quote me.
Dave, you had to watch John Adams, the miniseries on HBO.
No, I actually haven't seen it.
Oh my gosh!
Do you realize how bad those wigs must have smelled?
Well, Paul Giamatti,
which is why they were
who played John Adams, I remember he takes off his wig in the miniseries and he's bald, and I had to look up to see was John Adams bald like that, and of course he was. You see him later on, but he would practice law and walk around Boston with a wig on the whole time. So not just in the courtroom, though. So it was also to cover up his bald head. He was wearing the wig. Anyway.
Next story, speaking of 80s movies, do you guys know where the line "want to see a dead body" is from?
Stand By Me.
Correct. All right, well, in England, we got a situation where they thought they found a dead body. Road was blocked off for over 24 hours. They called in forensic teams to scour the scene for clues. What was sticking out of the ground was a hand and part of the foot. But it turns out they did not have a dead body. They just had an overused and exposed up sex toy.
Did someone bury it to try to make it look like a dead body, or was it just in the
seems to be the understanding.
the brush?
Yep. It's like, we got to get rid of this, so they partially buried it. I don't know. There's probably better ways of
Trickery at work
disposing of a
again.
sex doll than just burying it in the woods out back. But
We thought this was a person. Turns out it was just a fleshlight.
That's right. Did the sex doll have a white wig on like you would wear into Kenyan court?
I don't have that information, but
Definitely powdered, though.
Definitely powdered.
Man,
Definitely powdered.
cops got a laugh out of it.
Davey,
It's a
thank
waste
you.
of their tax dollars, if you ask me.
Thank you,
There's
Davey.
Davey Hudson.
Yep. Mhm.
Getting weird with us. Coming up, Andy Staples joins us. The very latest from his perspective on Harbaugh, sign stealing, Michigan, and more.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in the land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna lib. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement. And today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Just like that, the final hour of the Wednesday edition of Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow has arrived here on OutKick. Glad you're with us as we broadcast from 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. A lot of discussion today about Michigan, Jim Harbaugh, sign stealing, investigations, and more. Andy Staples has been all over this for On 3. You can check out Andy Staples On 3 on YouTube, which is a fantastic show where it's not even daily. It's like multiple times per day.
It's hourly some days, depending on the news cycle.
Especially
you never know.
with this one. Andy, thank you for the time. Always appreciate it. And if I'm looking into the NCAA's investigating sign stealing, it's not necessarily about evidence needed anymore. That's pretty clear. The question I have now is how long has this gone on and how deep does this story go? There's a lot of twists and turns to it.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's gone on for at least a couple of years, and the question is, what do you do about it? What is the NCAA equipped to even do about it? This is not something they normally handle. It's an integrity of the game issue, and it's actually a thing that moves betting lines, and so it's a little more pressing than what they're usually dealing with. Usually, they're just trying to keep athletes from getting money, and they're really can't do that anymore. So they don't have a whole lot going on, but they. It's interesting because they seem to have a pretty good pile of evidence here against Connor Stallions, the Michigan staffer who was allegedly running the surveillance ring. I don't know what it's called, the code breaking ring.
Intelligence.
Exactly.
In his LinkedIn bio, it says that he's going to bring some form of intelligence gathering to Michigan football that he learned in the Marine Corps.
And that's, I mean, I don't disagree with that. That seems like a pretty accurate assessment of the whole thing. But the question is, what did Jim Harbaugh know? How much did he know? It doesn't really, that part of it actually doesn't matter, because of the way the NCAA rewrote the rules a few years ago, the head coach is on the hook for anything that's a member of their staff does. So now the question becomes, what are they going to do about it and when? And the when part is really interesting. And I think, if you're expecting a quick resolution, if you're a Michigan fan who just wants to have this thing be over, or if you're like an Ohio State fan who wants to know what's going to happen to Michigan, well, you're not going to find out for a while, because the way the NCAA enforcement process works, you got to have a notice of allegations. The school has 90 days to respond to that. The NCAA then has 30 days to respond to the response. Like we're into some months now.
And maybe a new head coach.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he could be the coach of the Chargers, the Bears by that point.
Right.
And he's looked at an NFL job or tried to get an NFL job each of the past 2 years. And the guy went to a Super Bowl with the 49ers. He went to 3 NFC championship games. So I do imagine that itch is there, and he'd like to scratch it if he could. Now, the problem was he couldn't get one of the jobs that was open. And I don't know if he's going to be able to get one of the jobs that is open, but it would certainly be worth a try for him, because Michigan will have to do something. They will have to discipline him in some way. And I don't know exactly what that's going to be, because remember, initially we're going to do a plea. There's another case involving some recruiting stuff. And it's not necessarily the recruiting stuff, because if Jim Harbaugh had said, hey, these guys came to Ann Arbor during COVID, this kid was already committed, we drove all that way, so I figured I'd meet him for a cheeseburger. If he'd said I did that, there would have been really no issue. They would have slapped him on the wrist. That would have been that. Instead, he said, I don't recall. They show him a receipt. He's like, I still don't recall. And now that is a punishable offense as well. They consider that lying to them. So they've got that. And they were initially going to do a plea deal where he was going to be suspended for 4 games. That got rejected by the NCAA's Committee on Infractions. And Michigan then self-imposed a 3-game suspension that he served at the beginning of this season. So you got all that, and then you throw this on top of it, and they are going to tag it to Jim Harbaugh no matter what they find in terms of what did he know.
Andy, one of the reasons to love college football was your post that cited the VolQuest message board poster Arnie Palmer, I think it was.
Arnie Palmy alert.
Arnie Palmy alert that
Even
back
better.
in December had this story pegged. One of my little brother's friends is a scout, in quotations for them, paid him to travel to the UT Vandy game, had planned to go, but then the loss to South Carolina happened, still went because it was Thanksgiving weekend, followed up in January and followed up on that post and said, not sure if it's related, but they've been told not to tell Harbaugh what's going on. This guy had it all. And these conspiracy, and this turns out not to be a conspiracy theory because it's being investigated by the NCAA, but this level of fervor is one of the reasons we love the sport of college football so much.
It's beautiful. It's so beautiful. And then on the Oregon message boards, there was somebody who posted, I believe yesterday, and said, hey, I bet this happens in more places than you think. And says, we were at the Washington-Oregon game last year in Eugene, and there was this dude in front of us who just kept taping, filming the Oregon sideline with his camera. Like, this must be going on everywhere. Well, it turns out Connor Stallions bought the seat that guy was sitting in.
Incredible.
So, and the guy had no idea. Like, you just stumble upon this stuff. And that's what the fact that this touches so many schools. You got most of the Big Ten, obviously, but then Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, Oregon. I'm assuming there's some more there.
Clemson, I think, has also been listed as one. They were scouting.
Maybe not TCU.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why they scored 51.
That's true.
Fair enough on that one. Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy because if you give these people on the message boards a reason to become detectives, they will.
Yeah. The best response, the first reply to that one post by a Tennessee fan was, "We're so back." Was the first response when Michigan was scouting them, which was a great response. But I'll ask it to you this way, because you talk to a lot of coaches and obviously a lot of people around college football. To me, the one possible fallback from Michigan, which they haven't said anything yet and they're smart not to do so, but would be, guys, do you think this isn't happening everywhere to some extent? That this is going everywhere, and we can prove it here, and here, right?
They can't prove it though, because this is not happening everywhere.
So go into that, because that was going to be the question I wanted to ask you. Is it happening to this extent anywhere else, or are people you're talking to saying absolutely not?
No, I mean, other coaches normally with stuff, they'll be like, yeah, whatever, that happens. Now they're like, with this, they're like, what? They did what? Huh? Every coach tries to steal signs. Every program tries to steal signals within the game, or from the TV copy, or from the coach's copy. Every single one, no doubt. But are there people sending people to video sidelines at other places? No. There's not a bunch of schools that are just sending people out to video sidelines.
And it's pretty clear on the rule, right? There's no pleading ignorance here on, we didn't know we couldn't do that.
With a staffer, you can't do it.
Yeah, with offsite
it doesn't matter if you outsource the cheating, it's still cheating too. So
if you were paying someone else, even if it's a fan, it's cheating.
Yeah.
It's just, was it Todd Berry, I believe his name, director of the American Football?
AFCA?
Yeah, he's admitted that he would send a fan to games with a phone and then have it sit back to him. He said, well, I never looked at it. But it's like, what? Like on the record with that.
I am sure it goes on, but it is not that widespread. It is not everybody doing it.
What do you think happens over the last 4 games here in the season with USC? Lincoln Riley, he's at home based on an illness, doctor's orders. The last 4 games, they've got Cal this week, but, I mean, it's a gauntlet to finish with Washington, Oregon, and UCLA. I mean, 2 losses is just the start, isn't it?
Yes. I have a hard time envisioning them beating Washington or Oregon. Maybe they can beat one of them. But this was a team that was supposed to go to the playoff. This was a team that was supposed to win the Pac-12. This was a team that was supposed to compete for a national title. And it is essentially a worse version of last year's team. And that isn't what they signed up for. They signed up for Lincoln Riley coming and bringing them back to prominence quickly. And he brought Caleb Williams with him. Caleb Williams wins a Heisman. You assume everybody in the transfer portal wants to come play with Caleb Williams. And they did get some good players out of the transfer portal, but they have the same flaws they had last year with maybe a couple more. There doesn't seem to be a Jordan Addison type receiver that can take over a game. Their offensive line probably isn't as good as it was last year. Defensive line is maybe a little bit better, but their defense in general as a whole is not that good because Alex Grinch, the defensive coordinator, he's not shown at Oklahoma or at USC that he's capable of putting a defense on the field that can tackle throughout the season.
When you fire the offensive coordinator 8 games into the season, you know things aren't going well, and that's usually the last stop before the head coach is the next to go. And that's what Sam Pittman did this week with Dan Enos. Andy, do you feel like this is it, the way this thing is going for Sam Pittman at Arkansas, or is he getting another year?
I feel like they're trying to give him as many chances as they can because they like the guy. But if it goes very badly through the end of the season, you know, if FIU is the only other game they win this year and they finish 3-9, then they may make a change. But I think they like Sam Pittman and they're going to give him as many chances as they can. And this is why I always tell people that it doesn't matter how a coach treats people if he goes 12-0 or 0-12, because that will decide what happens. But it's in the middle there where that does matter. When somebody has to make a decision on you, if they like you, you might get one more chance. And that's what it seems like Sam Pittman's getting. And because he's very well liked there, they feel like he gets Arkansas. They can't have this.
Check out Andy Staples with On 3 and Andy Staples On 3, the podcast available. Behind the scenes with those in charge, are they as concerned with college football officiating as the viewing public, as the fans are with what we've seen? And I'm not specifically thinking of Tennessee, Alabama, but that certainly comes off a weekend where I'm asking the question.
The Iowa fair catch, no fair catch play is a big one.
And it's everywhere. Is there a plan to get it better?
No. The game's not slowing down. You have the same complaints in the NFL. People are always going to complain about the officials. I wish everyone could try to do it for a quarter and see how it feels. And then realize, oh yeah, they're going to mess up sometimes because it's just a nearly impossible job. The SEC let me be a line judge in Georgia's spring game in 2019. It is a very difficult, I thought I saw pass interference. I threw my flag. I ran up to the referee and he goes, okay, what number committed pass interference? And I'm like, wait, I have to remember the number. And I was like, let's just pick up this flag. And I also missed an intentional grounding call on Jake Fromm because it was close to the goal line. So like, if you're the line judge and you're in the field of play, you're going to stay kind of near the line of scrimmage and then move to where the first down marker is. On the goal line, you move immediately to the goal line. So I had moved off the line of scrimmage. So I wasn't really paying attention to where the line of scrimmage was. And Jake Fromm throws the ball. He's getting pressured. He throws the ball away out of bounds, but it's behind the line of scrimmage. So I should have dropped a flag for intentional grounding, missed it. And that's just really like every play you're dealing with 90 things at once. And then you have all these other guys trying to deal with it too. It is a very difficult job and things are going to get missed sometimes.
Well, look, if you asked that official to host your podcast one day, he wouldn't be very good at it either. But
he would be better at hosting my podcast than I would be at officiating.
We get that it's tough, right? It's going to be tough for someone who's never done it also.
What I'm saying is the NFL officials are better, and everybody says they stink too.
This is what they do. And here's my issue with it. Now that we have the rules expert that's going on television, and you get disagreements between the rules expert and what's going on the field, and at times there are decisions that just baffle the mind on replay, where the rules official and everyone watching at home is seeing one thing, and then they come on the speaker and say another one. I think the issue that fans have more than anything, Andy, and you could speak to this, it's the silence from the leagues about it.
Yeah.
It's the lack of transparency. I really think if they came out and just said, our crew missed this upon review, in this game, in one individual moment, I don't think it would quiet everyone, but they would at least say, well, at least they owned it. At least I'm not crazy for thinking they missed that one.
I have asked commissioners this. I have asked, people in charge, head of officiating for different conferences this. And the reason they say they don't want to do it is they feel like any admission of incorrectness will cause people to think it's even more fixed or more, the officials are more incompetent than they already do. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it would actually humanize them a little bit. And I would appreciate if they did that. They do that for the coaches. The coach in every league, the coach has a call with the head of the officiating federation that handles their league, or has some back and forth where they'll send them some plays and the head of officiating will send stuff back, or maybe send some plays to them and say, hey, here's why we did this. Here's why we officiated it this way. A little transparency would go a long way as far as that goes. I agree with you there. I actually like the idea of if you've got a controversial call, instead of sending the pool reporter in to ask the question and they come out and deliver the one quote from the referee should have to give a press conference, just like the coach did. Like, the coach screws up, he's got to talk about it. Referee should have to do it too.
Andy, we've got exactly 1 minute left here, so I'll be brief on the question. Final year for the college football playoff at 4 teams. Which 4 teams right now do you trust the most to be there a month from now?
Michigan and Georgia. And then the other ones are really up in the air.
It's going to be a crazy month.
Yeah, Texas, Oklahoma, Washington, Oregon, Utah, Ohio State, Alabama, like all of those. There's somebody, 2 of those are getting in, but I have no idea which 2.
It's a good answer.
Yeah. I mean,
my answer too right now.
I can't wait. I can't wait for it. And even the teams that you're most confident in could fall. I mean, it's not inconceivable with Georgia.
Oh, look, Georgia's next 4 games, that's a really tough stretch.
Andy,
thank you, bud.
Always great, man. Loving the podcast. Keep up the great work, and thanks again for joining our show.
Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.
Andy Staples, On 3. Check out the show and all the great coverage there with On 3 Sports. Chad, coming up, Jerry Jones and Dak Prescott. Is Jerry on board with Dak being the future of the franchise? Some are questioning that. That's next.
I'm here at the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix, but that's not the only big race that's on people's minds. Let's go talk about it.
There's no way Biden can win again. There's just no way. Even the people that voted for him because they didn't like Trump, now at least have to see, like, senile, not all there, probably won't be alive for 4 more years.
Are you a Trump guy? Or are you a DeSantis guy? Or someone else?
I don't like any of them.
Who's your dream candidate? Who would you want to run?
Myself. I think the best candidates probably are smart enough not to run.
I just hope there's somebody that's young enough to care about the country instead of their politics.
My fear is they get Gavin Newsom from California. And I think it would be the new cool vote for the younger people, and that's what I don't like.
Who do you think on the Republican side would be able to take on Gavin Newsom?
Great question. As a Republican registered, I love what Trump's body of work did, but they're just out to get him and destroy him, and we won't get things done, which is crappy for me to say. I thought DeSantis was going to be the guy. Trump only has 4 years left. He cannot fix everything that just happened in 4 years. And he's going to be battling indictments and all these false stuff for the next 4 years. We won't get anything done. And it'll just be this stalemate in America. That's why I almost don't want him in. But if he is the leading candidate, that's who I'm going to vote for.
Is there any Democrat that you would vote for, consider voting for?
Absolutely not.
What about RFK Jr.?
No.
Who should our first female president be?
Michelle Obama, of course. Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to go with Harambe 2024.
We have the 2024 presidential race coming up, and I wanted to see who you thought your favorite TV characters would vote for. Homer Simpson, like who do you think he would vote for?
Donald Trump, all the way.
Vito Corleone.
Whoa. Whoever advances the cause of the Corleone family. Yeah.
Tony Soprano. If Tony Soprano is voting in the 2024 election, who do you think he's voting for?
I'm going to go Ron DeSantis.
Okay. Why do you think that?
Just seems like a Ron DeSantis kind of guy.
Is this a meatball joke that you're trying to make right now? What about Homer Simpson?
Homer would vote for Biden because he's a dope.
Who do you think Napoleon Dynamite would vote for?
That's a good question. I actually don't know.
There's a right answer here.
He's voting for himself or Pedro. There's a Viking show, I think.
Okay.
Maybe that's Hulu. I don't know.
So in the Viking show, whatever the main character is, who do you think they would vote for in 2024?
Probably a goat or a dog.
I think we have one of those in office right now. So who do you think Jon Snow would vote for in this upcoming election?
I'm going to say Donald J. Trump.
Why do you think so?
Because Game of Thrones is all about drama, and Trump comes with the drama, baby.
Would you vote for Trump from jail?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably. Because at that point, what else do you have to lose?
Okay, would you vote for Trump from a jail cell?
Yeah, baby, I will get Trump out of jail.
Would you vote for Trump in jail?
Oh, yeah.
Based as
The thing that Trump needs to remember is there's another political figure that said, I don't recall very well. Yeah. And that's all he's got to say.
Is there like a dream candidate, someone that you think could like save us all?
Yeah, Jesus.
Amen to that.
Our thanks to Andy Staples for joining us. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. Chad, we were discussing officials and college football officiating specifically, even at the highest level. Power 5, SEC, Big Ten, anywhere you want to look. It's a fact that there is a shortage of officials at the high school level. And then, of course, you move up to, you get the call up to the different levels of college athletics. And then, you know, you've got crew members who are being evaluated in the national championship game, for instance, last year, that are being elevated and called up to the NFL. I think because of that, you're not getting the cream of the crop. You're getting a less, like a tier lower than what you would normally be selecting, because far fewer amounts of candidates, let's say, are in the pool to choose from, where now high school athletic associations are having to go on Thursday and Friday nights, where every school has to play on a Thursday once a year because they don't have enough officials. And there's got to be there has to be a tier to where that affects every level at some point.
Well, yeah, and you mentioned the multiple nights of high school football now for that. It's tough because who grows up and wants to be an official? I mean, in terms of goals, like, you know, I really want to be a football official. There's not a lot of people saying that. So it feels almost like public service work when you're doing it to go and officiate a game. But if you get to the highest levels, there is something cool about, I'm sure, officiating a game in some of these cathedrals of college football or in the NFL, if you make it to the height of your profession.
A lot of them are related to the former officials now.
Yeah, it's people that have grew up in. It's kind of an officials family, right? You grow up with it and you want to do it also. It's handed down, much like, you know, a family of cops or firefighters or a military family. So I see some of that. It's hard. I want to reserve the right to complain about it, like every other sports fan, when it's bad. And I think we have to do that and have to hold officials accountable. But I also acknowledge the fact it is a difficult job, and it's hard to find people that want to do it and want to put in the time and games and hours to work your way up through the system to become an SEC or Big Ten or NFL official. That's difficult to find those candidates that are both talented enough and want to put in the time and work to get there. I get it. Now, when Andy says, you know, I was out there officiating one game and it was tough, yes. I think most sound-minded people would say it would be difficult for me to do it. But I've used this example with him. It'd be difficult for that official to go host an entire podcast by themselves the way you do, or write a column on college football the way you do. It'd be difficult for me to go be a doctor for a day. If it's not your profession, oftentimes it's going to be difficult for someone who doesn't do it. That's what they do. When they're out there calling huge SEC games or NFL games, that's their profession. They've done it a lot, and they're out there for a reason. So, pardon me, but my standard is high for those officials when they're out there in that moment.
And this is not – I feel different about my reaction to officiating this season. I don't know if you do. But, Chad, I'm thinking there are some obvious things that are being missed on a routine basis now. And it's not just because I'm watching SEC. It's across the board. There's just some really bad, obvious, blatant calls that at least in the NFL you can just get the buzz from upstairs in some cases and just quickly change it to the right spot or the right call or whatever. Sometimes you have to go for a review, whatever. But yeah, there are some areas where it's just what seems very routine is being missed, and I don't see a rush to address it, and that's concerning to me.
And now I think it's heightened because you have the rules analysts, the former officials that are on, and they're disagreeing at times what's going on, or they're saying one thing and they're coming back upon review and saying the opposite, and then they kind of go away again, and it's back to the guys calling the game.
You're right, that does play a factor in it, but like the uncatchable. Like even this past weekend in Indy,
it's a bad sequence.
Uncatchable. And it's not just that one game. It's happened a handful of times throughout the season. And you would think like you would be able to see, you're watching the play to see if there's any penalty, any foul being on the defense, offense, whatever, for the possible catch, possible interception. And you don't see the football, that to me is uncatchable.
Well, the Iowa game, that wasn't a fair catch called for when he's pointing out the ball or telling his upbacks to get out of the way of it, and then he catches it off the bounce, and they go back upon review and say that he called for a fair catch, and they negate a game-winning punt return for a touchdown. Unacceptable. And sorry, Bama fans, but you can't convince me that one of the most penalized teams in the SEC win an entire football game without committing one penalty in play. They had a snap infraction all day. Not one hold, offense or defense, not one pass interference. There's video and photographic evidence of a guy getting horse-collared on a hold on a touchdown pass by Alabama. I get that calls like that are missed. I think what you want to see is consistency. And this is not claiming that every penalty Tennessee made was called in the game. We know one that wasn't, and others that were called that were legitimate penalties. But when it's that big of a discrepancy, you're going to have question marks. And when you can see things, that were, speaking of uncatchable, a defensive hold pass interference call on Tennessee that kept a drive going that led to a touchdown that would have been a punt after that play that was thrown 7 yards out of bounds, trying to get rid of the ball. It's things like that drive fans crazy. And that's what's got to be cleaned up. I don't have as big of an issue. It's frustrating, but if there's a lot of ticky-tack pass interference calls, at least call them on both teams to where now this crew's going to call that. This crew's going to call that. So by the fourth quarter, you're not surprised when that flag comes out. Just the consistency is a big issue with it. And sometimes it is consistently bad on one call, right? But you got to keep it up with both teams. So I don't know what the answer is, Hutton, but I'm with you. It feels different right now in college football, the NFL, than it has in the past.
Chad, consistency would be an issue for Dak Prescott. And Jerry Jones definitely wants to see more consistency. He was discussing the 49ers prior to the Cowboys matchup 2 weeks ago, now 2.5 weeks ago, and said that they're the most likely team to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. And that was before the beatdown took place. He then, to The Athletic, had a quote following Minnesota's victory over San Francisco, said, "I would have liked to play better against the 49ers. You see a team step up and play like Minnesota did, and their quarterback did. They can be had, the 49ers. Well, if you go back and look at the stat line for Dak Prescott against the 49ers for the Cowboys, it's not impressive at all. 3 picks, barely, 150, 160 yards passing in this game. He completed less than 60% of his throws. And then we see what Cousins did, where he kept the Vikings offense on the field. The points aren't all that impressive. What is, though, is the number of first downs and some big moments in big throws where he throws for well over 300 yards in that game. Addison goes off as a takeaway on a possible pick, runs it in for a score right before halftime. They made the big plays. The question is Prescott set up to do that within this Cowboys offense. Jerry's admitted he's not putting up a big run at the trade deadline for players. I think Derrick Henry makes a lot of sense for them. But based on his comments, I mean, he's going to pick up the phone and listen, but he's not picking up the phone and calling. At least that's what he's saying publicly. I don't think there's any inkling with Jerry where he's saying, I'd rather have Cousins than Prescott. I don't think that's what he means. But there is a big evaluation going on right now with Prescott and this team. Back-to-back 12-win seasons. The last 2 years, they've been put out by the 49ers, which is why this is implied. We see their quarterback make plays, Minnesota's. We need to do the same. That's obvious. And Prescott, while the length of the contract is a bit longer than this, there are voidable years that go into effect after next season. So it's this year and next year, and then what? On what was a 4-year, $190 million contract. I believe it's just under 200. They need to figure out, are we extending? Are we restructuring? Are we waiting this out with Dak, who's going to be 31 next year in the final year of the contract before you can void out some money? I'm still indifferent on him, and because I'm not on board with Prescott taking Dallas and the Cowboys to the Super Bowl that Jerry wants to see as he doesn't get younger by the day. What do you think? Way too inconsistent.
The statement you made about if you're indifferent on him at this point and all the time he's had with Dallas in that offense.
At some point you have to admit it.
Then the indifference is your answer. The indifference means, yeah, you could do a lot worse than Dak Prescott, but it's also the admission that you can do a heck of a lot better than Dak Prescott. And he's probably not the answer to win a Super Bowl for the Dallas Cowboys, because that is the goal. That is Jerry Jones' goal every year, and especially with the clock ticking, and it's been a long time since their last title. If you're indifferent and you think you don't have an answer on Dak Prescott, there's your answer at this point in his career. So they're going to be moving on at some point from him. The question is then, who is the next Dallas Cowboys quarterback? I don't hate Dak Prescott. I think he's a good NFL quarterback, but he's not top tier. He's not upper echelon, and he's not a guy that you're going to circle every year and say, you got a shot with him. You got a shot with Joe Burrow. You got a shot with Patrick Mahomes. You got a shot with Josh Allen. I can keep going on. Lamar Jackson. You're going to have a shot with these guys. We thought that about Deshaun Watson, and that changed. With Dak Prescott, I'm not putting him in that list of top quarterbacks year in, year out. He's on the outside looking in to that group, and I don't see that changing anytime soon.
Well, and the thing is, you have to ask yourself, okay, we've got a shot with Prescott, because many would say get to the tournament, get to the playoffs, and then you have a shot. But I look at it as who do you trust over a 4-game span to get you there and win in different ways? Who's not going to lose you the game? And while Prescott only has 4 picks this season, that's good considering what we saw him tied for the lead in interceptions a year ago. And that was in 12 games played, by the way. We also only see six touchdown passes. And this is a good Dallas team. Everyone wants to rip on Jerry Jones for also being the GM. There's a lot of talent on that roster. Didn't take, for instance, passes on Johnny Manziel and drafts Zach Martin, who's an 8-time All-Pro offensive lineman. Gives a 2-year extension to that guy this offseason instead of having that player sit out and have a holdout. I mean, I like the roster he's put together. I'm just kind of I waver one side or the other with the QB. And then if you have that, there will be some games where your defense is going to be balling out and your quarterback's going to have the ball and throw a pick. And I don't trust Prescott to get me back to the Super Bowl over a 4-game span if you're playing in the wild card, which right now they are.
And there are certain teams that you look at them and you say, will the roster elevate the team or the quarterback when you get in the playoffs? The Cowboys, to me, are without a doubt maybe the roster will elevate them on a playoff run. I don't look at them and think Dak Prescott's going to get hot and carry that team on his back.
But that's what Stafford did in the Rams run.
Yeah.
You know? And
But
Brady
Stafford
came back.
was a guy
It
that
was
year that I
24 to-
thought.
It was 24-3 though, and
Yeah.
they're up that, and then you have the ball after Brady. It goes down, ties the game. They get the 2-point conversion, and then the offense gets in field goal range and makes the throws in the moment to get you there.
But see, Stafford was that guy to me. I went at it. Look, he can elevate a team and get hot in the playoffs. I don't look at Dak Prescott that way. If they're going to do something, I feel like it's because Micah Parsons loses his mind and plays out of this world. But it's not going to be Dak Prescott.
And
that's the sad part with him.
And the naysayers on Stafford would say, well, he elevated the Rams when he got there, but he couldn't do it in Detroit. And I would say, well, Dak has had a lot of talent around him.
Yeah.
A ton. And it's time to take off or not. And if you still don't have that answer, he's not going to do it. But also, like, the debate between he and Cousins is, no. The success rate and the bounce around, I'm sticking with Prescott over Kirk Cousins in that. Just based on at best, you view them in the same tier if you're ranking these quarterbacks at best.
Yeah. It's tough to.
There's not a good alternative.
Kirk Cousins is an upgrade for a number of teams, but if there's any question, like Kirk Cousins being new to the offense, the team is not the answer. If it's close.
Is Cousins going on that 4-game run to win you a title?
Probably not.
The quarterbacks Chad listed, I'm with him. I trust those guys to be able to do that. By the way, coming up, the Cowboys have the Rams this week, and then they're on the road in Philly, followed by a game against the Giants. Some big matchups coming up for Dak Prescott and company. Well, generally, they're good in the regular season. More headlines next.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement. And today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Been a fast show today. Hope it's been for viewers and listeners across the OutKick network. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the network here. It could be on YouTube, or if you're listening to this great radio partner, we say thank you. Chad, Kirk Cousins to the Niners talk already heating up if things don't pan out with Brock Purdy, who, by the way, if you haven't heard today, he's in concussion protocol. Purdy in concussion protocol. Sam Darnold getting the first team reps. That would be the expectation. And before the injury's announced, I'm saying, Darnold would be the backup. And he slated to, right now, get the start because it's very unlikely that a player goes into the protocol and then is cleared this quickly. Learning about it today, I'm saying, on a short week, road trip. We'll wait and see the official status, but no practice for Purdy, and he won't be able to clear until he practices and then responds to it the following day. That'll be the final stage of it. But it could be Darnold against Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. And
so I'm confused about the insinuation here. If it doesn't work out for Brock Purdy with this concussion,
no,
or
just
moving forward next year.
If the Niners, who are perceived to be the top team in the NFL, if things don't roll down the path that everyone expected with Purdy and coming back off of the crazy run that he went on last year, and then things just don't go as planned within Shanahan's offense, like we've seen the last 2 weeks, could they turn to Kirk Cousins, for example?
After the season.
After the season, yeah. After the season.
I mean,
sure they could.
We have gone from front runner in the MVP ballot to get rid of him and go to Kirk Cousins pretty quick with Brock Purdy. I know this is a fast-paced business, but, man, that's quite the guess at this point.
The connections there are simply because Shanahan was in Washington when they drafted Robert Griffin III and then also drafted Kirk Cousins. So there's the link with the former fourth-round pick. And then Cousins came in and played very well, while RG3 did not. That's the link to it that Florio's making, that Cousins could be the guy. And, I mean, based on the salary and the future salary of what they're about to hand in Minnesota to Justin Jefferson, they've already done that with TJ Hawkinson. There will be others. They've paid a couple of guys on defense, too. It's unlikely Cousins is re-signing there. He knows that. So he's going to be available. Tannehill should be available. There will be other QBs.
Well, look,
Purdy has been good. This idea, like Shannon Sharp, I told you he wasn't elite. No one was arguing that Purdy was up there in the discussion with Patrick Mahomes. But was he playing at an MVP level to start the season? Yeah. And that doesn't mean he's ascended to elite status, but it doesn't mean he sucks as a quarterback either. He's not on the tier with some of the worst in the league currently. He's a good quarterback.
It's weird for Shannon Sharp to get that excited about a 7th-round pick, not playing well after playing great, and then claiming, "Oh, I'm the one who told you that he's not elite."
He wasn't elite.
Look, I've just warmed up to the fact that Brock Purdy is a really, really good NFL quarterback, based on what I've seen and what he's done throughout his career so far, which is a short career. But he's gotten it done at every turn. So I'm not going to warm up to him being a franchise, really good NFL quarterback and follow that up and say, now it's time to look to Kirk Cousins this offseason. I'm not there. Mike Florio may be there because Shanahan has a connection to him. I'm not even ready to speculate about that right now. Brock Purdy is the man in San Francisco. He is their franchise quarterback until proven otherwise. There's going to be options for Kirk Cousins. I'm not ready to circle the 49ers as a spot that's in need of a quarterback of Kirk Cousins' ilk this season before the deadline or next season right now. Not ready to go there.
Yep, and Purdy's in a great spot financially for the Niners. They can't, even if they wanted to, they cannot give him an extension and big money until after year 3, which would be after next season. Meanwhile, it's just a 1-year contract for Sam Darnold. He's in a big spot this Sunday against Cincinnati if he gets the chance to start, because Purdy can't due to the concussion. Chad, Jim Irsay said that the NFL has admitted and understands that they did not make the correct calls at the end of the Colts and Browns game. And Irsay also tweeted, "I believe we need to institute instant replay for all calls, including penalties, in the last 2 minutes of all games. Final 2 minutes of all games. Institute replay for everything." I'm not against that. The problem is they don't want to slow down the game. That's their ultimate goal, is for the networks to get in and out on a doubleheader day for CBS or Fox in this window that we're discussing because of this game, or any game that they're pointing to. They have that sweet spot of 3 hours and 7 minutes. That's what they want.
Well, so Bill Belichick has been big on this, about just make every play reviewable, even the judgment calls. I like that, and that doesn't take up any more time because you still have the same amount of reviews to go over. It's not adding your thing about that Jim Irsay's saying with you get added reviews in the final 2 minutes. That could knock over that 3 hour, 7 minute time window. But this would not be changing anything because you get the same amount of challenges. Just now, what you can challenge has opened up to every major call in the game. That could affect the game one way or the other. So I'm all for that compromise from Bill Belichick on this one.
And admitting fault on this, big deal. That doesn't turn things back over.
No, but you know what? I can't. I just told Andy Staples I'd love for the SEC or college football, Big Ten or someone to come out and admit anything and be transparent in some way. So I'll at least give the NFL credit. They didn't do it publicly. They told Jim Irsay this, right?
Yeah, and Irsay's tweeting it because
and now
he's
Irsay's
public.
saying it. So I don't know how transparent that is. But, yeah, there's no solace in losing a game for these calls. If you're the coach or the owner or the GM or whoever that's being told, yeah, they missed that one. Sorry about that. Sorry they missed that one.
And there was
because jobs are on the line when that happens. I mean, this could cost someone their job.
They're up 38-33.
That game right there.
And there's a illegal contact penalty on a strip sack fumble recovery for Indy where they just kneel on it after that. It's called back, and then subsequently they end up having the uncatchable pass that was deemed pass interference in the end zone. Browns go on to win the game. Will Levis expected to be in the game, expected to get the start for the Tennessee Titans on Sunday as they host the Atlanta Falcons and Desmond Ridder. About time to ascend to at least the backup role. At least that's what I was saying. If Tannehill could play with the ankle issue coming off of the London game in the bye week, if he was going to play, Levis should be the backup. Now, the second-round pick that the Titans traded up for this past draft makes his NFL debut on Sunday against Atlanta in a big spot against an opponent that the Titans can absolutely win against. Question is Levis ready for his moment? And I still think we see both quarterbacks.
Yeah, you got to see what you have, though. I am not a believer in the idea that because the offensive line is bad or the receivers aren't great or the season isn't going well, you got to protect this guy and wrap him in bubble tape. I mean, you traded up to get Will Levis in the second round, a guy many thought going into the draft was a top 5 pick that fell to you in the second round with the idea that he is your future franchise quarterback. There is no time like the present to see what you have with him. No one is expecting this Titans team to go on some winning streak or to win a bunch of games. He's going to take his lumps. He's going to make mistakes. He's going to get hit hard at times. Let's see how he responds to it. That should be the thinking of NFL teams. I'm glad the Titans are going to give him his chance and see what they have with him. And I think that's absolutely the right move right now with Will Levis because they need to know what's coming next for this franchise.
He was at his best when they had a strong run game at Kentucky. They also had a strong offensive line. To me, is Henry here a week from now? It sounds like going into the game, the deadline's next Tuesday. They can play this game. He's in at least a decent spot to where he can rely on a running back if the Titans want to hand him the football as much as what we've been used to seeing instead of what we have seen this season. Chad, Brady Quinn. There was a old show, Dr. Quinn?
Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman.
Here's Dr. Quinn.
Jane Seymour.
Demolition is what happened here with Brady Quinn and Quincy Avery, who is Deshaun Watson's quarterback coach, off the field and away from the facility. This is the quote originally from Brady Quinn on Fox Sports Radio with LeVar Arrington and Jonas Knox. Everyone with a medical opinion has cleared Deshaun Watson. The situation is almost similar to a kid getting a $230 million trust fund. You ask them to get a job, and they have no incentive to do it. That from Brady Quinn. The response from Quincy Avery is, Brady, I'm going to be real. You don't know what the bleep you're talking about and sit behind a microphone gossiping like a little high school chick. And here's the back and forth with the two of them. He goes on and says, come talk anytime you want in person. Open invitation. That's from Brady Quinn to Quincy Avery. And Avery responds and says, I just seen you Saturday. I don't have anything I want to talk to you about. I'm telling you, we're talking about things you don't know. Talking on another man who doesn't know, you don't know, is weak. And Quinn says, LOL, well, I didn't see you. Point being is the response. And Quinn says, how about we massage this conversation and get it to a happy ending? Does that sound satisfactory?
That's a good response.
And it ends there.
Yeah. That's when you know it's probably time to walk out if you're him.
Now, I will say,
I think it's a weird thing to say. Talking on another man who doesn't know you is weak. So it was the backhanded thing of this guy doesn't even know who you are, but yet I'm concerned enough with your opinion to tweet you, but you shouldn't talk about him because he doesn't know who you are. Okay.
So what we've done though, like both sides here, I believe, know something that's going on, because there's no doubt you can question Deshaun Watson and what's going on based on the fact that originally he said he was going to play. Then he didn't. And the coach said it was on Watson. Brady's also correct in saying he's been cleared by the medical staff and was cleared from concussion protocol during the game last week against the Colts. But what's also, Brady Quinn says, this is similar to a kid with a $230 million trust fund. You ask them to get a job and they have no incentive to do it. What was the incentive for Watson to play last week then? He was already injured. He already had the shoulder issue and he still played. So I don't compare it to that whatsoever, because he was coming off of a great game against Tennessee, sits out, then goes on this 3-week bender, including the bye week where he's on the sideline, but you don't really know if it's a contusion, then all of a sudden it was more than that. It was the throwing shoulder, whatever. Pain tolerance, whatever they want to point to. So what would the incentive be for him to actually start the game against Indianapolis if he was a kid asked to get a job with a trust fund and just chose not to get a job? He would have no incentive to play that game. And the Browns, I mean, to me, it's on the flip side. Stefanski now protecting him from getting hit instead of earlier, a month ago, saying, yeah, Watson chose to not play. It was his call. There are two different messages being sent. And both sides have a reason to argue their point.
It's the back and forth. It's the lack of a consistent message about what's wrong with him, what's going on, what's his availability. Because even after this game, you're right, he started, he played, he got hit hard, his head hit the turf, they evaluated him for concussion, he got cleared of it, he could have gone back in. Stefanski falls on the sword, said that was my decision. I didn't want to see him hit anymore. Went with P.J. Walker. They win the game. Great. No harm, no foul. Stefanski says post-game, he'll be back. That was me just keeping him out of the game. He cleared concussion. He'll be back next week. And then Deshaun Watson's telling a reporter after the game, I don't know. We got to pray over the shoulder and pray on it and see if I'm going to be back next week. What is going on?
I think,
can the head coach and the quarterback get in the same room and have a discussion and talk to each other so they can both go in front of a camera and say the same thing? That's what I want in this whole deal. Whether that be Deshaun Watson's out for 4 weeks because of the shoulder issue or he's playing next week. Just have a united front. It's not hard to get in the same room, have a conversation, and understand each side. And they don't seem to be doing that.
Cleveland on the road against Seattle, and Watson did have an MRI on the shoulder, and injured reserve is on the table. Stefanski won't say what their decision is going to be on IR. You want to quiet down this for a couple of weeks, several weeks, that's the way to do it. But the Browns need him. You're going to rely on defense, just ask San Francisco how that goes. Join us tomorrow, 3 to 6 Eastern, right here on the OutKick Network.